Claire Bennett woke to the soft sound of rain tapping against the tall windows of the bridal suite. For a few seconds, she did not move. She stayed beneath the ivory sheets, eyes half open, watching the pale morning light spread across the ceiling of the Grand Ashford Hotel. Outside, downtown Chicago was hidden behind a silver veil of drizzle, the kind of delicate rain that made the world look polished and expensive. Inside the suite, everything smelled of white roses, champagne, hairspray, and fresh linen. It was her wedding day. For the first time in years, Claire let herself smile before thinking about work, her father's expectations, her mother's worries, Madison's latest crisis, or the endless demands of Bennett Group. Today was supposed to belong to her. The thought felt strange enough to be dangerous. She sat up slowly and turned toward the window. Her wedding dress hung from a carved wooden hanger near the glass, glowing softly in the morning light. It was not the most extravagant dress in the world, though it had cost more than Claire would ever admit aloud. It was elegant, fitted through the waist, with long lace sleeves and a sweeping skirt that seemed almost too delicate to touch. Tiny pearl buttons ran down the back. The bodice shimmered faintly when the light caught it. She had chosen it herself. She had paid for it herself. That mattered. In the Bennett family, almost everything came with invisible strings. Her father, Robert Bennett, gave gifts like he signed contracts, with conditions attached. Her mother, Diane, gave affection in unequal portions, always saving the softest part of herself for Madison. But this dress was Claire's. Every stitch of it belonged to her, bought with the salary she had earned from years of cleaning up problems no one else wanted to face. For 6 years, she had loved Ethan Whitmore. For 6 years, she had believed that loving him was one choice in her life that had not been made for her. Now, in a few hours, she would walk down the aisle and become his wife. A knock came at the door, followed by her mother's voice. "Claire, are you awake?" Claire drew a breath, smoothed her hair, and said, "Come in." Diane Bennett entered, carrying a garment bag over one arm and a cup of tea in the other. She was already dressed in pale blue silk, her hair pinned neatly at the nape of her neck. At 58, Diane still had the fragile beauty Madison had inherited. Wide eyes, fine bones, a softness that made people want to protect her, even when she was the one causing the damage. "My beautiful girl," Diane said, smiling as she looked at Claire. For one brief second, Claire let herself believe the words were meant only for her. Then Diane's gaze shifted around the room. "Has Madison come up yet?" The smile inside Claire faded a little. "Not yet," she said. "She texted the bridesmaids last night and said she'd be here by 8. "It's 8:30. Diane placed the tea on the vanity, already frowning. "She knows she's your maid of honor. She shouldn't be late." "She probably overslept," Diane sighed. "Your sister has been emotional lately." Claire almost laughed, but she did not. Madison had been emotional since the day she was born, or at least that was the family legend. Madison cried, people moved. Madison pouted, people apologized. Madison broke something. Claire was told to forgive her because she was younger. Madison failed. Claire was told not to make her feel worse by succeeding too loudly. "She'll be here," Claire said. Diane came behind her and gently touched Claire's hair. "You always sound so calm." Claire looked at her reflection in the mirror. "Someone has to." Her mother did not seem to hear the edge in the words. She was already checking her phone. The suite filled quickly after that. Bridesmaids arrived in satin robes, laughing and carrying iced coffees. A makeup artist spread brushes across the vanity. A hairstylist plugged in her curling iron. Someone opened a bottle of champagne, even though Claire had only taken 2 sips of tea. White roses stood in glass vases on nearly every surface, and the hotel staff moved in and out with practiced silence. Everyone told Claire she looked radiant. Everyone told her she was lucky. Everyone told her today would be perfect. Claire tried to believe them. Still, there were small cracks in the morning. Ethan had not answered her last 3 messages. At first, she told herself he was busy. The groom had his own schedule, his own nerves, his own family members to manage. But Ethan usually replied quickly, especially on important days. His last message had come at 6:12 a.m. Can't wait to see you. After that, nothing. At 9:05, Claire texted him again. Are you okay? The message delivered. It did not show as read. Across the room, Diane was pacing near the windows, whispering into her phone. Madison, sweetheart, call me as soon as you get this. Everyone's asking where you are. Claire looked away. A few minutes later, her father entered the suite in a dark charcoal suit, his silver hair combed back, his expression already tight with stress. Robert Bennett had built Bennett Group from a regional manufacturing supplier into a national logistics and development company. He was admired, feared, and rarely interrupted. Even at his daughter's wedding, he looked like he was preparing for a boardroom war. Dad, Claire said. Robert softened when he saw her. For a second, he looked proud. You look beautiful. Thank you. He crossed the room and kissed her forehead. The gesture was brief, almost formal, but Claire still treasured it. Then his phone rang. Robert looked at the screen and stepped away immediately. I have to take this. Claire watched him move toward the far corner of the suite. His voice dropped low, but she caught pieces. No, not today. I don't care what the invoice says. Send it to Ryan. No, don't authorize anything else until I see it. Claire's attention sharpened. Invoices? On her wedding morning? She almost stood to ask him what was happening, but Diane came back toward her, holding a pair of pearl earrings. Your grandmother wore these on her wedding day, Diane said. I thought you should have them. Claire froze. Her mother had never offered her grandmother's pearls before. She had always said they were too delicate, too sentimental, too precious to risk. They're beautiful, Claire said quietly. Diane fastened them to Claire's ears. There, perfect. Claire stared at herself in the mirror. For once, she almost looked like the daughter her family had chosen. The feeling lasted until Diane's phone buzzed again. She glanced down and went pale. Mom? Claire asked. Diane did not answer. She quickly typed something, then looked toward the door. Did Madison text you? Claire asked. She said she's coming up. Good. But Diane did not look relieved. The makeup artist had just finished Claire's lipstick when the door to the bridal suite burst open. Madison Bennett stumbled in as if she had run through the entire hotel. Her blonde hair was loose and tangled around her shoulders. Her mascara had streaked beneath her eyes. She wore a pale pink dress, wrinkled at the waist, and clutched a white envelope so tightly the paper had bent in half. Her other hand was pressed over her stomach. The room fell silent. Every laugh died at once. Diane rushed forward. Madison? What happened? Madison looked at her mother, then at Claire. Her lips trembled. I'm sorry, she whispered. Claire stood very still in her silk bridal robe. Madison, what's wrong? Madison's eyes filled again. She lifted the envelope. I tried to keep it from everyone. I really did. Her voice cracked. I thought I could leave. I thought I could handle it alone, but I can't. I can't let my baby grow up without a father. For one terrible second, the words made no sense. Baby, father. Claire heard one of the bridesmaids inhale sharply. Diane's hands flew to her mouth. Robert ended his phone call without a word. Claire looked at Madison's hand on her stomach, then at the envelope, then back at Madison's face. What are you talking about? Madison's eyes moved toward the door behind her. Claire turned. Ethan stood there. He had not been in the room a second before. Or maybe he had, and Claire simply had not noticed because her mind had not allowed him to belong in this nightmare. He wore his wedding suit. His dark hair was neatly styled. His face was pale. He looked at Madison first. Not Claire. Something cold opened in Claire's chest. Madison made a broken sound and lowered her head. It's Ethan's baby, she said. The suite became so quiet Claire could hear the rain against the windows again. No one moved. No one breathed. Claire stared at her sister. Then she looked at the man she was supposed to marry in less than an hour. Ethan, she said, and her voice sounded strangely calm even to herself. Tell me she's lying. Ethan's jaw tightened. He opened his mouth, closed it. Claire felt the floor tilt beneath her. Tell me, she repeated. Ethan looked down. I don't know. The answer was worse than yes. Diane caught Madison as her knees gave way. Oh, sweetheart. Madison sobbed against their mother's shoulder. I didn't mean for this to happen. I swear I didn't. It was that night after the engagement dinner. Ethan was so drunk and I was trying to help him. I thought maybe if I left town, no one would ever know. Claire remembered that night. 3 months ago, Ethan had drunk too much at the private dinner Robert hosted to celebrate the engagement. Madison had laughed too loudly, touched Ethan's arm too often, insisted she would make sure he got back to his hotel room because Claire had been stuck on a call with the Singapore office. Claire had thanked her. She had thanked Madison. A small, ugly sound pressed against the back of Claire's throat, but she swallowed it. She would not fall apart in front of them. Not yet. Did you sleep with her? Claire asked Ethan. His eyes finally met hers. I don't remember everything. Claire stared at him. Did you sleep with my sister? I was drunk. That isn't an answer. I woke up and she was in the room. His voice was low, rough. She said nothing happened. I believed her. Madison lifted her head, tears spilling down her face. I didn't want to ruin your life, Claire. I didn't even know until a few weeks ago. A few weeks? Claire repeated. You knew for weeks, and you chose my wedding day to tell me? Madison flinched as if Claire had struck her. I was scared. Diane turned sharply. Claire, don't! Claire looked at her mother. Don't what? Don't attack her right now. Look at her. I am looking at her. She's pregnant. Claire let the word hang in the room. Pregnant. It was astonishing how quickly one word could rearrange everyone's loyalties. Robert's face had gone hard, but not with anger at Madison. With calculation. With panic. He looked like a man watching a building catch fire 5 minutes before investors arrived. Claire turned back to Ethan. Have you seen a doctor's report? Ethan glanced at the envelope in Madison's hand. She has paperwork. Have you verified it? Madison cried harder. You think I would lie about this? Claire answered without hesitation. Today? Yes. Several bridesmaids gasped. Diane's eyes flashed. Claire, what? Claire demanded. My sister walks into my bridal suite less than an hour before my wedding and says she's carrying my fiancé's child, and I'm not allowed to ask one question. Madison pressed both hands to her stomach. I can't breathe. Ethan moved toward her immediately. That was the moment Claire understood. Not when Madison said the words, not when Ethan failed to deny them, not even when Diane held Madison like a wounded child. It was when Ethan crossed the room to steady Madison instead of reaching for Claire. Something inside Claire went perfectly still. Robert snapped into motion. Everyone out. No one moved. Out! He repeated, in the voice that made executives sit straighter and lawyers stop arguing. The bridesmaids scattered. The makeup artist packed nothing, simply fled. The hairstylist unplugged her tools with shaking hands. Within seconds, the suite emptied until only Claire, Madison, Ethan, Robert, and Diane remained. Robert shut the door. For a moment, he said nothing. Then he looked at Ethan. Is there any chance this child is yours? Ethan rubbed a hand over his face. Yes. Claire closed her eyes. Diane made a soft, devastated sound. Robert turned to Madison. You're certain you're pregnant? Madison held out the envelope. I took tests. I went to a clinic. I didn't want anyone to know. Robert took the papers and scanned them. Claire watched his expression, searching for skepticism, suspicion, anything. She saw only dread. Dad, Claire said, those papers need to be verified. Robert did not answer. Dad, he lowered the pages. The ceremony starts in 40 minutes. Claire almost laughed. Of all the sentences he could have said, that was the one he chose. The ceremony? She repeated. There are 300 guests downstairs, Robert said. Half our board is here. The mayor is here. The Whitmores are here. The press is already in the lobby. Claire stared at him. My fiancé may have gotten my sister pregnant, and you're worried about the guest list? I'm worried about the family. No, Claire said. You're worried about the Bennett name. Robert's face tightened. This is not the time for accusations. Then when is the time? After I walk down the aisle like an idiot? After Ethan says his vows while Madison sits in the front row carrying his child, Madison began crying again. I said I would leave. I said I wouldn't ruin anything. Claire turned on her. You came here in front of everyone. I panicked. You planned the timing perfectly. Madison's eyes widened. How can you say that? Because you waited until the guests were seated and the cameras were downstairs. Diane stepped between them. Enough. Claire, your sister is in no condition for this. Claire looked at her mother. What condition am I in? Diane's mouth opened. No words came out. Claire nodded slowly. That's what I thought. Ethan spoke then, quietly. If the baby's mine, I have to take responsibility. Claire turned to him with something like wonder. If, she said. You keep saying if. You don't know. You haven't checked. You haven't asked. You haven't done anything except stand there and look guilty. Ethan's face flushed. What do you want me to do? I wanted you to be my husband, Claire said. Apparently that was too much. Silence followed. Then Robert said the sentence that would split Claire's life in two. Ethan should marry Madison. At first, Claire thought she had misheard him. Diane looked up, startled. Robert. No, Claire said. Robert did not look at her. He looked at Ethan, then at Madison, then at the papers in his hand. If there is a child, the responsible thing is to give that child a legitimate family. No, Claire repeated. Robert finally looked at her. Claire, listen to me. I am listening. I just don't recognize what I'm hearing. The guests are already here. Canceling the wedding would create a scandal none of us can control. And replacing the bride with her sister is not a scandal? It can be handled privately. Claire let out a breath that felt like broken glass. Privately? You want to steal my wedding in public and call it private? Diane was crying now. Claire, please, I know this is painful. Do you? Madison is pregnant, so everyone keeps saying she cannot be abandoned. Claire looked at Ethan. But I can? No one answered. Diane reached for Claire's hand. Claire stepped back. Her mother's face crumpled. You're stronger than she is. There it was. The old verdict. The family law. Claire was strong, so Claire could be hurt. Claire was strong, so Claire could wait. Claire was strong, so Claire could give up the last piece of cake. The bigger bedroom, the internship Madison wanted, the apology Madison owed, the attention Madison needed, the love Madison demanded. Claire was strong, so apparently Claire could survive being erased on her wedding day. She looked at Diane and said softly, I am so tired of being punished for not breaking loudly enough. Diane flinched, but Robert had already moved past emotion. We need to make a decision, he said. No, Claire said. You've made one. Don't pretend I was included. Madison lifted her tear-streaked face. I don't want this. I don't want to take anything from Claire. The words were perfect. Too perfect. Diane immediately turned to her. Sweetheart, this is not your fault. Claire laughed once, sharp and hollow. Madison lowered her eyes, but not before Claire saw something pass across her face. Not guilt, not grief, something quieter, satisfaction maybe, or relief. Then Ethan said, I'm sorry, Claire. She looked at him. 6 years. 6 years of dinners, trips, promises, arguments, reconciliations. 6 years of him telling her she did not have to carry everything alone. 6 years of him standing beside her at Bennett galas, charming her father, reassuring her mother, laughing with Madison. 6 years, and that was all he had. I'm sorry. If there's a child, Ethan continued, I can't walk away. Claire's voice was very calm. You walked away from me before you even knew whether the child existed. His expression twisted. That's not fair. No, she said. It isn't. The next problem arrived like another insult. Madison had no wedding dress. No one said it at first. They all simply became aware of it at the same time. Madison stood in her wrinkled pink dress, hair ruined, face wet with tears. Downstairs, 300 people waited for a bride. The flowers had Claire's initials woven into the arrangements. The program had Claire's name printed beside Ethan's. The cake had been designed from a sketch Claire had approved. The photographer was paid. The aisle was ready. and near the window, Claire's dress glowed in the soft rain light. Diane looked at it. Claire saw the thought form before her mother spoke. "No," Claire said immediately. Diane turned to her. "Claire, no. It's only for the ceremony. It is my dress. Madison can't walk down the aisle like this. She doesn't have to walk down the aisle at all." Robert's voice hardened. "Claire," she turned to him. "Don't. Do not make this more difficult than it already is." Claire stared at her father. "For whom?" Robert's jaw tightened. Madison whispered, "It's okay. I don't need it. I don't want her to hate me more." Diane began to cry harder. "Listen to her. Even now she's thinking of you." Claire looked at Madison. Madison's eyes were lowered. Her shoulders trembled. One hand remained delicately over her stomach. She looked like a saint painted in tears. Claire suddenly hated every person in that room for believing the picture. Diane stepped closer. "Please, Claire, your sister is carrying a child. She cannot take another humiliation today." Claire's voice dropped. "Another humiliation?" Her mother froze. "I was dressed to marry the man I loved," Claire said. "My sister came in and said she's pregnant with his baby. My fiancé didn't deny it. My father decided to hand her my ceremony, and now my mother is asking for my dress." She looked from one face to another. "Tell me, which humiliation should I protect Madison from?" No one spoke. Then Robert said, "Enough. The dress is not worth destroying this family." Claire's chest rose and fell. "The family was destroyed the moment you decided I was the easiest person to sacrifice." Diane reached for the dress. Claire moved in front of it. For a second, mother and daughter faced each other with the gown between them like a body. "Move," Robert said. Claire looked at him. She had heard that voice used on employees, contractors, competitors, men who had tried to cheat him. She had never heard it directed at her quite like that. A command, not a plea, not a father speaking to his daughter. A chairman removing an obstacle. Claire stepped aside, not because she agreed, because something in her had gone numb. Diane took the dress down with shaking hands. A bridesmaid was called back in, then a hotel attendant. Claire stood behind a dressing screen while they helped her out of the bridal robe and into a plain cream slip because the dress she had been about to wear was carried across the room to Madison. No one looked directly at Claire. That was perhaps the worst part. They could take from her as long as they did not have to witness the taking. She heard the rustle of fabric, Madison's soft sobs, Diane murmuring comfort, Ethan pacing near the door, Robert speaking on the phone, telling someone there had been a family adjustment and that the ceremony would proceed with minimal delay. A family adjustment. Claire gripped the edge of the dressing screen until her knuckles whitened. When she stepped out, Madison was being laced into her wedding dress. Claire's wedding dress. The lace sleeves fit Madison almost perfectly. The waist was a little loose, but Diane pulled the ribbon tighter. The skirt spilled around Madison like water. Someone fixed her hair quickly, pinning it back with Claire's pearl comb. Another person dabbed concealer beneath her eyes. Diane removed the grandmother's earrings from Claire's ears, without asking, and fastened them onto Madison. Claire stood in her slip and watched her mother dress her younger daughter for the wedding that had belonged to her. Madison looked at her through the mirror. For 1 second, only one, the crying stopped. Then Diane turned and Madison lowered her face again. Robert instructed a hotel staff member to take Claire to a private sitting room behind the ballroom. "She needs quiet," he said. Claire almost smiled. Even now, they were writing the story for her. Not abandoned, not betrayed, not robbed, just overwhelmed. She allowed herself to be led down a service hallway, away from the bridal suite, away from the laughter that had vanished, away from the dress, away from the man, away from the family who had chosen the version of events easiest for them to survive. The sitting room was small and windowless, with beige walls, a velvet sofa, and a table holding untouched bottled water. Someone had used it earlier to store extra floral arrangements, and the air was heavy with the scent of lilies. "Mr. Bennett asked that you remain here until after the ceremony," the hotel coordinator said gently. Claire looked at her. "Of course he did." The woman's face softened with pity. "I'm sorry." Claire hated that the apology came from a stranger. When the door closed, Claire sat on the sofa. She was still wearing bridal makeup. Her hair was still pinned beneath the ghost of a veil that was no longer there. Her lips were painted a soft rose shade chosen because Ethan had once said it made her look like herself, only happier. From somewhere beyond the walls came the faint swell of music. The processional. Claire shut her eyes. That was supposed to be her cue. She imagined the ballroom doors opening, the guests turning, Ethan waiting at the end of the aisle, her father offering his arm, her mother crying in the front row, Madison smiling beside her in a maid of honor dress. Instead, Madison was walking toward Ethan in Claire's gown, and Claire was hidden in a back room like an embarrassing mistake. For a while, she did not move. Then she stood. No one had locked the door. That was their mistake. Claire stepped into the service hallway and followed the sound of music. She did not know what she intended to do. Stop the ceremony? Scream? Stand at the back so everyone could see what had been done to her? But halfway down the hall, she passed a half-open door and stopped. Inside was a narrow dressing room with a full-length mirror. Madison stood before it in the wedding dress. Alone. For the first time all day, she was not crying. She studied herself with her head tilted, one hand smoothing the lace at her waist. Her face had been repaired beautifully. Her hair was pinned with Claire's comb. The pearls shone at her ears. She looked like a bride. Claire pushed the door open. Madison turned. For a heartbeat, neither sister spoke. Then Madison's expression shifted. The fragility returned, but it arrived a little too late. You shouldn't be here, Madison whispered. Claire stepped inside and closed the door behind her. No, Claire said. I suppose I shouldn't. That seems to be today's theme. Madison looked down. I know you hate me. Hate requires understanding. I'm still trying to understand. There's nothing to understand. Things happened. I was scared. Things don't happen 5 minutes before a wedding unless someone brings them there. Madison's eyes flickered. Just once, Claire saw it. Tell me the truth, Claire said. Was any of this an accident? Madison touched the pearls at her ears. Their grandmother's pearls. Claire's stomach tightened. Madison said softly, You always ask for truth like it belongs to you. Claire went still. What does that mean? Madison looked at her reflection again. It means you've always had everything. Dad's trust, the company, the perfect fiancé, everyone acting like you earned the whole world just because you never cried while carrying it. Claire stared at her sister. Madison's voice remained soft, almost sad. Do you know what it feels like to stand next to you your entire life and only be called beautiful because no one trusted you to be anything else? For the first time that day, Claire heard something real beneath Madison's performance. Not remorse, resentment. Deep, old, poisonous resentment. You could have talked to me, Claire said. Madison laughed under her breath. Would you have given me anything if I asked nicely? Claire looked at the dress. Apparently, I gave you plenty. Madison's gaze sharpened, then softened again in an instant. I didn't ask for it to happen this way. No, Claire said. You just made sure it could. The silence between them stretched thin. Outside, the music changed. The ceremony was moving forward. Madison turned back to the mirror and adjusted the skirt. The movement was small, almost careless. But there was no shame in it. Claire saw that clearly now. Madison was not collapsing under guilt. She was settling into victory. You should go, Madison said. People will wonder where you are. Claire almost smiled. No, Madison, they won't. Madison met her eyes in the mirror. For a second, the mask slipped again. A tiny smile touched her mouth, so faint that anyone else would have missed it. But Claire had spent her whole life watching Madison become whatever the room required. She knew the difference between a terror and a weapon. She knew the difference between innocence and performance. Madison said quietly, Today, they're looking at me. The words were not a confession, not enough for anyone else. But they were enough for Claire. She looked at her sister standing in her stolen dress, wearing their grandmother's pearls, preparing to walk into Claire's stolen future. And for the first time since the door had burst open that morning, Claire did not feel broken. She felt awake. Madison had taken the groom. Her parents had taken the wedding, her mother had taken the dress. But the truth was still somewhere beneath all the lies. And Claire Bennett knew how to follow missing things, especially when they left a paper trail. Outside, the wedding march swelled. Madison lifted her chin, placed one hand over her stomach, and walked toward the door. Claire did not stop her. Not yet. She only watched her go, memorizing every detail. The dress, the pearls, the false tremble in her fingers, and the smile Madison forgot to hide. By the time the door closed, Claire had stopped being the bride they abandoned. She had become the witness they underestimated. The applause began before Madison reached the end of the aisle. At first, it was uncertain, a scattered, confused sound rising from people who did not understand what they were seeing, but had been trained by expensive weddings to respond politely. Then Robert Bennett stood at the front of the ballroom, lifted one hand, and gave the room a controlled smile. That was all it took. The Bennett name had always been more powerful than truth. The guests stood. Chairs scraped softly against the marble floor. Silk dresses whispered. Men in dark suits shifted with careful faces, their eyes moving from Madison in the bridal gown to Ethan at the altar, then to the programs in their hands where Claire Bennett's name was printed in elegant gold lettering beside Ethan Whitmore's. Claire watched through the narrow gap of a service door. No one was supposed to see her there. She had found the small hallway behind the ballroom almost by instinct, drawn by the sound of the music she had chosen months ago. The string quartet played the processional beautifully, as if beauty had not become an accomplice. Every note rose into the crystal chandeliers, spilled over the white roses, and wrapped itself around the wrong bride. Madison walked slowly, one hand on her stomach. The gesture was delicate, practiced, devastatingly effective. A few guests lowered their voices in sudden understanding. Others simply stared, uncertain whether they had missed an announcement. The local lifestyle reporter standing near the back whispered something to her photographer. Claire saw the camera lift. Robert stepped forward before panic could take shape. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice warm enough to soothe and firm enough to warn. "Our family has experienced a deeply private change this morning. We ask for your grace, your discretion, and your continued blessing as Ethan and Madison begin their life together." A deeply private change. Claire's fingers curled against the doorframe. He did not say her name. Not once. In less than an hour, her father had removed her from her own wedding, as neatly as he would remove a clause from a contract. Diane sat in the front row, crying openly. Anyone watching would have thought she was moved by the sight of her younger daughter walking toward a man who had chosen responsibility. They would not know that Diane's tears had helped lace Claire's dress onto Madison's body. They would not know that the pearls at Madison's ears had been taken from Claire without permission. They would not know that somewhere behind the ballroom, the real bride stood in a cream slip beneath a borrowed coat, watching her life be rewritten in real time. Ethan stood at the altar with his face pale and his shoulders rigid. He looked like a man being sacrificed. Claire wondered if he knew how insulting that was. When Madison reached him, she lifted her face. Her lashes were wet. Her mouth trembled. Ethan took her hands. The guests exhaled. It was a perfect scene if one did not know where the dress had come from. The officiant hesitated only once before beginning. "Dearly beloved." Claire turned away. She had thought seeing it would make her scream. She had thought rage would rush up and tear through her chest. Instead, a strange silence settled inside her. Not peace, never peace. Something colder, something that felt like the moment after a bone broke, when the body had not yet decided how much pain to release. A hotel staff member found her near the service corridor. "Miss Bennett," the woman whispered, startled. "Your father asked that you remain in the sitting room." Claire looked at her. The woman immediately looked ashamed. "I'm sorry," she added. Claire had received more honest sympathy from hotel employees in the last 10 minutes than from her own family all morning. "It's all right," Claire said. But it was not all right. would never be all right again. She walked away from the ballroom before the vows began. The back corridors of the Grand Ashford were narrow and dim compared to the bright public spaces. They smelled of carpet cleaner, lilies, and hot food being prepared somewhere below. Claire moved through them without direction until she found a side exit near the staff elevators. Outside, the rain had softened to mist. The alley behind the hotel was lined with delivery vans and silver trash bins. A valet smoking under the awning froze when he saw her. His eyes went to her hair, still pinned in bridal curls, then to the coat wrapped over her slip, then down to the satin heels on her feet. He knew, or at least he knew enough. "Do you need a car, ma'am?" he asked quietly. Claire almost said no. She had nowhere to go. Then she remembered she still had a penthouse apartment 10 blocks away, a closet full of clothes, a phone, a laptop. A life that had not yet been stolen, though Madison seemed determined to try. "Yes," she said, "please." The valet rushed to call one. Claire stood beneath the awning and looked down at her left hand. Her engagement ring caught the gray light. Ethan had proposed with it at a vineyard in Napa, while her parents and Madison hid behind a row of vines, cheering when she said yes. At the time, Claire had thought it was sweet, a family moment, a memory they would retell at dinners for years. Now she wondered whose idea it had been to invite Madison to that trip. She pulled the ring off. It resisted for a second at the knuckle, then slipped free. The pale band of skin beneath it looked indecently bare. Claire closed her fist around the ring so tightly the diamond pressed into her palm. The car arrived. As it pulled away from the Grand Ashford, Claire looked back once. Through the front windows, she could see flashes of white flowers, gold light, and guests moving inside the hotel as if nothing unforgivable had happened. Her phone rang before she reached the first intersection. She almost ignored it. Then she saw the name, Ryan Cole. Claire frowned. Ryan was Bennett Group's chief accountant, a cautious, nervous man with wire-rimmed glasses and a habit of apologizing before delivering bad news. He never called her on weekends unless something was wrong. He certainly would not call her on her wedding day unless something was burning. She answered. "Ryan?" For a second, there was only static and breathing. "Claire," he said, voice low. "I'm sorry. I know what day it is." She looked at the rain sliding down the car window. "Apparently everyone does." He paused. "Are you alone?" The question made her sit straighter. "Yes, I found something. I wasn't going to bother you today, but the transfer queue changed this morning, and I don't think it can wait." "What transfer queue?" "Event expenses, wedding-related vendors. At least that's how they're coded." Paper rustled on his end. "But the numbers don't make sense. There are duplicate hotel charges, floral invoices at 5 times the contracted amount, a media vendor I can't verify, and several smaller payments routed through a consulting company I've never seen before." Claire's mind shifted. Pain did not vanish. It simply moved aside for the part of her that knew spreadsheets better than people, contracts better than promises. "How much?" "Already cleared? Just under 800,000. Claire went still. "And pending?" Ryan swallowed audibly. "Another 1.6 million scheduled after final approval." "Who authorized it?" "That's why I'm calling." "Ryan?" "The access code belongs to Madison." Claire closed her eyes. The car passed through a green light. Somewhere ahead, a siren wailed and faded. "Madison doesn't have clearance for that level of payment. She received temporary event authorization 2 months ago. Your father approved it. It was supposed to let her coordinate wedding expenses and vendor deposits." Claire remembered Robert mentioning it casually over dinner. Madison had wanted to help with the wedding, had felt useless because Claire handled everything herself. Diane had said it would be good for Madison's confidence. Robert had grumbled, but eventually agreed. Claire had been too busy reviewing an acquisition budget to object. "Temporary authorization doesn't allow vendor creation," Claire said. "It shouldn't," Ryan replied. "But someone added an exception. I thought it was you." "Me? Your secondary approval code appears on 2 vendor entries." Claire's grip tightened around the phone. "I didn't approve anything." "I know." Ryan sounded frightened now. That's why I called you instead of escalating internally. If I send this to your father without context, it could look like I helped authorize it. He did not answer. He did not need to. Claire looked down at the ring cutting into her palm. Madison had taken her wedding. Now her name was appearing inside suspicious financial approvals. Send me everything, Claire said. Claire, are you sure? With what happened today? What have you heard? Silence. Ryan, he exhaled. People are saying the wedding changed because Madison is pregnant. Claire stared at the seat in front of her. There it was. The news story had already escaped the hotel. Not that Claire had been betrayed, not that Ethan had failed to deny sleeping with her sister, not that her parents had forced her to give up the ceremony. Madison was pregnant. Ethan had done the honorable thing. Claire had disappeared. That was all a good rumor needed. Send the files, Claire said. Use my personal encrypted address, not the company server. Understood. And Ryan? Yes? Do not mention this to anyone. Not my father, not legal, not Madison. Especially not Madison. Ryan hesitated. There's something else. Claire's stomach tightened. What? The pending transfer is scheduled to clear after a signature event tomorrow evening. What signature event? I don't know the details. The calendar entry is marked private. But the document reference mentions equity onboarding. For a moment, the words did not connect. Then they did. Equity onboarding. Ethan. Her father had planned to bring Ethan into Bennett Group after the wedding. It had been discussed as a family matter, though Claire had never loved the idea. Robert wanted Ethan to have a formal position after marriage, something impressive enough to satisfy the Whitmores and useful enough to keep him loyal. Ethan had pretended reluctance, but Claire had seen the way his eyes sharpened whenever Robert mentioned board access. Send everything, she repeated. I will. The call ended. Claire's car stopped in front of her building. She paid without remembering how much. The doorman saw her step out, soaked by mist, still wearing bridal makeup beneath a borrowed coat. His mouth opened, then closed. Miss Bennett, he said gently. Are you all right? Claire looked at him. It was such a simple question. No one in her family had asked it. No, she said. The honesty surprised them both. Then she walked inside. Her apartment was quiet when she entered. Too clean, too prepared for a woman who was supposed to return there as a wife only long enough to change before leaving for her honeymoon. Her suitcase stood near the bedroom door. Ethan's travel jacket hung over the back of a chair. 2 champagne flutes waited on the kitchen counter beside a card from Olivia that read, "To the only woman I know who can run a company and survive a seating chart." Claire stood in the middle of the living room and finally let the ring fall from her palm onto the glass coffee table. It made a small, hard sound. She did not cry. She took off the borrowed coat, changed into black trousers and a white blouse, washed the lipstick from her mouth, removed the pins from her hair one by one until curls fell around her shoulders like something ruined. Then she opened her laptop. Ryan's email arrived 5 minutes later. Claire downloaded the files. The numbers were worse than he had said. At first glance, the invoices looked messy but plausible. Weddings at the Bennett level were expensive enough to hide sins in plain sight. Flowers, photography, security, transportation, media management, private hospitality for out-of-town guests, designer favors, luxury rentals, 100 line items, all softened by labels. But Claire knew how money lied. She sorted by vendor. A pattern emerged. 3 companies had been paid repeatedly over the past 8 weeks. 2 had no real business footprint. The third had a website built from stock images and vague language about strategic lifestyle brand consulting. Its registered address was a mailbox in Delaware. The largest payments clustered around Madison's temporary access period. Claire opened the approval logs. Madison's credentials appeared again and again. Then, exactly as Ryan had warned, Claire's secondary code appeared beside 2 vendor additions. But the timestamps were wrong. One approval had been entered at 2:14 a.m. on a night Claire had been on a red-eye flight from Seattle. The other had been entered during a board lunch where her phone and laptop had been with the executive assistant outside the dining room. Someone had used her code, or copied it, or wanted it to look that way. Claire leaned back slowly. Madison was not impulsive. Not this time. This was not just a sister stealing a groom in a storm of tears. This was layered, prepared. Financial? Her phone buzzed again. Mom. Claire let it ring. It stopped, then rang again. She answered on the third call. Claire, Diane breathed. Where are you? Claire looked at the spreadsheet glowing on her screen. Home. You left the hotel. You told me to stay hidden. I decided leaving was more dignified. Diane made a hurt sound. Please don't speak like that. How should I speak? We need you to come back. Claire laughed quietly. No. Claire, listen to me. People are asking questions. I imagine they are. Your father is doing his best to manage this. But some guests noticed you were upset. Upset, Claire repeated. Diane lowered her voice. Please don't make this worse. Claire looked toward the window. Rain blurred the city into gray. Worse for whom, Mom? For everyone. No, try again. A pause. Then Diane said the truth. For Madison. Claire closed her eyes. There it was again, the center of every family crisis. Madison's comfort, Madison's reputation, Madison's tears, Madison's needs. I was supposed to get married today, Claire said. I know. No, you don't. Because if you knew, you wouldn't be calling me to ask whether I'm protecting Madison from embarrassment. Diane's voice trembled. She is carrying a child. You have not verified that. Claire, she waited until my wedding day to tell everyone. Ethan doesn't remember anything. The papers could be fake. How can you say that about your sister? How can you not ask it? Diane fell silent. Claire could hear distant music through the phone. The reception had probably begun. Her reception, her flowers, her food, her first dance playlist, perhaps now adjusted into something more suitable for a scandal dressed as a sacrifice. Your father wants to make a statement to close family and key guests, Diane said. He thinks it would help if you were present, calm, supportive. Claire stared at the phone. You want me to stand beside Madison? Just for a few minutes. In my dress? Diane inhaled sharply. That is unfair. No, Claire said. Unfair was you taking it off me. Her mother began to cry. Years ago, Claire would have softened at that sound. She would have apologized for being too harsh. She would have buried her own hurt because Diane's tears were more visible. Not today. Don't post anything, Diane whispered. Don't talk to anyone. The family cannot survive a public war. The family survived sacrificing me just fine. Claire, please. Madison has suffered too. Claire's voice turned cold. Madison is currently wearing my wedding dress at my reception. Diane said nothing. Claire ended the call. For several seconds, she sat motionless. Then another call came in. Unknown number. Claire almost ignored it. But some instinct made her answer. Hello? A soft sob came through the speaker. Claire? Madison. Claire did not speak. Claire, it's me. Madison's voice was weak, breathy, trembling, perfect. I know you hate me. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. Claire glanced at her laptop screen, at Madison's name repeated across payment approvals. Are you alone? Claire asked. There was a tiny pause. What? Is Mom listening? Madison sniffed. No. Ethan? No. Then you can stop crying. Silence. For a moment, Claire heard only the faint hum of the hotel reception behind Madison. Glasses clinked. Music drifted. People laughed carefully, the way people laughed around scandal when the wine was expensive. Then Madison's breathing changed. When she spoke again, the tears were still in her voice, but something beneath them had hardened. You always think you're so much smarter than everyone. Claire felt no surprise, only confirmation. Are you pregnant? Madison let out a small laugh. Not enough to be a confession. Enough to be cruel. Do you think it matters what you believe now? It matters to me. That's always been your problem, Madison said softly. You think what matters to you should matter to everyone. Claire looked at Ethan's travel jacket hanging over her chair. You stole my wedding. I didn't steal anything. People chose. Because you gave them a story designed to make them choose. Madison's voice sharpened. You had 6 years with him. 6 years being perfect Claire with your perfect job and your perfect fiancé and dad trusting every word you say. Did you ever think, maybe I was tired of standing beside you while everyone measured what I wasn't? And that justifies this? I didn't say that. You didn't have to. Another pause. Then Madison said, the dress looked better than I expected. Claire's fingers went still on the edge of the laptop. There it was. A small blade slipped between ribs. Madison continued, almost dreamily. I thought it might feel strange, wearing something that was meant for you. But it didn't. It felt appropriate. Claire's voice was quiet. Enjoy it while you can. Madison laughed again. Careful, Claire. If you start threatening a pregnant woman, people might think today broke you. Claire looked at the approval logs. No, she said. Today woke me up. Madison said nothing. Claire leaned closer to the phone. You made one mistake. And what's that? You thought I'd be too busy bleeding to notice the knife? For the first time, Madison did not answer immediately. Then the soft, helpless voice returned. I'm sorry you're hurting, she whispered. I really am. The call ended. Claire sat back. Her hands were steady now. That frightened her more than shaking would have. She opened a new folder on her desktop and titled it Madison. Then she began saving everything. Invoices, approval logs, vendor profiles, screenshots, payment paths. Madison's call would have been useful if she had recorded it, but Claire had not. She would not make that mistake again. At 6:47 p.m., Ethan called. Claire let it ring long enough to consider not answering. Then she picked up. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. Claire, he said finally. His voice sounded exhausted. She wondered if he had danced with Madison yet. What do you want? I wanted to check on you. The absurdity of it almost took her breath away. You wanted to check on me after marrying my sister at our wedding? I know how it sounds. No, Claire said. I don't think you do. Ethan exhaled. Everything happened so fast. Madison had weeks to tell you. You had 3 months to wonder why you woke up in a room with my sister. My parents had 40 minutes to decide my wedding was transferable property. None of this happened fast. It happened because every person in that room chose the easiest lie. That's not fair. You keep saying that. Because you're acting like I wanted this. Claire looked at the ring on the table. Didn't you? He went silent. It lasted 1 second too long. Claire's eyes narrowed. What did my father promise you after the wedding? Claire. What position? This isn't about business. It is always about business with my father. What did he offer you? Ethan's voice tightened. A board observer role? Some equity options later. After the marriage was finalized, it was standard family planning. Claire laughed softly. Standard family planning? Is that what we're calling it now? You know Robert wanted me involved. I know you wanted to be involved. I was going to be your husband. And now you're Madison's. Conveniently, still a Bennett son-in-law. That is cruel. No, Ethan. Cruel was not asking for proof before you let them take my dress off me. His breath caught. For a moment, she thought shame might reach him. Then he said, if the baby is mine, I have to do the right thing. Claire closed her eyes. You don't know there is a baby. Madison showed us paperwork. Paper can be forged. Why would she do that? Claire opened her eyes and looked at the screen filled with money trails. That is the first intelligent question you've asked all day. Ethan's voice dropped. What does that mean? It means you should ask yourself why Madison needed to marry you today. Not next week, not after a doctor confirmed anything. Today. She was scared. No, she was prepared. Claire, you're hurt. Yes, she said, but I'm not stupid. He said her name again, softer this time. I never wanted to hurt you. Then you should have made different choices. She ended the call before he could apologize again. Apologies had become boring. At 8:12 p.m., Ryan sent another file. The subject line read, Urgent, Equity Documents. Claire opened it. The document was a scanned packet with Bennett Group's legal watermark. She recognized the format immediately. shareholder instruments, internal transfer acknowledgments, conditional equity agreements. Her father had planned to sign Ethan into the company structure after the wedding. That much Claire had expected. But the attachment contained something new. An addendum. It was dated 3 days earlier. Claire read the first page, then the second. By the third, her mouth had gone dry. The addendum stated that upon Ethan Whitmore's marriage to a Bennett family member and in consideration of his anticipated role in family governance, Ethan would be eligible for a restricted equity allocation subject to Robert Bennett's approval. That was bad enough, but the next clause was worse. In the event of pregnancy involving a direct Bennett heir, Ethan could designate his lawful spouse as temporary proxy manager of his equity rights for the purpose of protecting the interests of the unborn child. Claire read the sentence 3 times. Lawful spouse, pregnancy, temporary proxy, unborn child. Madison did not need Ethan to love her. She did not even need him to be clever. She needed him to be a husband on paper. She needed the idea of a baby to make the proxy clause look noble. And she needed Robert panicked enough by scandal to rush everything through before anyone asked why the addendum existed at all. Claire scrolled to the metadata Ryan had attached. The file had been accessed by Madison's temporary account twice in the past 48 hours. A note from Ryan appeared beneath it. Claire, I don't think this was in the original packet. I found the addendum in the version scheduled for tomorrow's signing event. It looks like legal hasn't fully reviewed the final language. Someone may be trying to push it through under Robert's authority. Claire pressed both hands flat on the desk. Tomorrow, not in a month, not after medical verification. Tomorrow. Her phone buzzed with a message from Olivia Grant. I just heard. Tell me you are not alone with a bottle of wine and a murder weapon. For the first time all day, Claire almost smiled. She typed back, no wine? No murder weapon? Possibly securities fraud, Olivia called within 10 seconds. Start from the beginning, she said. Claire did. She told Olivia everything. Madison bursting into the room, Ethan refusing to deny it, Diane taking the dress, Robert replacing the bride, the ceremony, Ryan's call, the invoices, the access logs, Madison's taunting phone call, Ethan's board roll, and finally, the equity addendum. Olivia did not interrupt. That was one reason Claire loved her. Olivia Grant was a litigation attorney with a voice like polished steel and a talent for making powerful men regret underestimating her. She and Claire had met in college, where Olivia once defended Claire from a professor who implied she had only earned a finance award because of her last name. Olivia had destroyed him with footnotes. When Claire finished, Olivia was silent for a few seconds. Then she said, "This is no longer a family scandal." Claire looked at the city lights beyond the window. "No, this is a stage coercion event wrapped around a possible fraud scheme." Claire let out a slow breath. Hearing it named made it more real. Olivia continued, "Do not confront Madison in person again. Do not send accusations in writing. Do not discuss the financial documents with Ethan. Do not go back to that hotel unless I am with you." Olivia, I'm serious. So am I. No, Claire. You're traumatized, humiliated, and probably running on adrenaline. That makes you dangerous to yourself if you walk into a room full of people who have already decided Madison is the victim. Claire swallowed. Olivia's voice softened slightly. I know you want someone in your family to believe you. Stop waiting for that. We need evidence that makes belief irrelevant. Claire closed her eyes. Evidence that makes belief irrelevant. That was the only kind Claire trusted anymore. What do we do? She asked. You send me everything Ryan sent you. I'll verify the clinic documents if we can get a copy of them. I'll look at the addendum. I'll pull corporate filings on the vendors. And Claire? Yes? If Madison is using a fake pregnancy to trigger an equity proxy, that is not just ugly. That is fraud. Claire looked at the folder on her desktop. Madison. She's going to try to make Ethan sign tomorrow. Then we have less than 24 hours. Claire almost asked if Olivia thought they could stop it. She did not. Some questions were useless when the answer did not change the work. After the call, Claire forwarded the documents and sat in the dark for a long time. At 10:03 p.m., Ryan called again. His voice was lower than before. Claire, Robert just confirmed tomorrow's event. What time? 7 p.m., same hotel, private family reception with select board members and legal present. Purpose? Officially? To welcome Ethan Whitmore into the Bennett family and stabilize the optics after today. And unofficially? Ryan hesitated. Ryan? He's signing the equity onboarding packet. Claire's eyes closed. There it was. Is the proxy addendum included? Yes. Does Ethan know what he's signing? I don't know. Claire thought of Ethan's voice on the phone. Hurt, defensive, proud, afraid to admit he might have been wrong. Madison would not need to force him. She would only need to cry. Ryan continued. There's more. The pending vendor transfer is scheduled to release after the equity documents are countersigned. I think the signing event is being used as a trigger. Claire opened her eyes. How? I'm not sure yet. But the approval chain links the final payment release to the event closeout package. If Madison gains proxy or influence over Ethan's allocation, she may be able to authorize movement through a related account before anyone freezes the vendors. Claire stood and walked to the window. The rain had stopped. The city below looked washed clean. It was a lie, of course. Cities did not become clean because the rain touched them. Families did not become honorable because the scandal wore white. Men did not become responsible because they chose the easiest woman to save. And sisters did not become victims because they knew how to cry. Claire pressed her palm to the glass. This morning, she had woken up as a bride. By noon, she had become an inconvenience. By evening, she had become a rumor. And now, by night, she was looking at the outline of something far larger than betrayal. Madison had not stolen the wedding because she loved Ethan. She had stolen it because the wedding unlocked something. A name, a role, a signature, a door into Bennett Group's money and shares. Claire looked back at the engagement ring lying on the coffee table. For 6 years, she had thought Ethan was the future Madison wanted to take from her. Now she understood. Ethan was not the prize. He was the key. Ryan, she said, her voice steady, send me the full signing packet, the vendor trail, and every login record tied to Madison's temporary authorization. I will. And Ryan? Yes. Back everything up somewhere safe. A pause. You think this is going to get worse? Claire looked at the folder labeled with her sister's name. No, she said. I think it already has. After they hung up, Claire stood alone in her apartment while the last traces of her wedding day disappeared into midnight. Her dress was gone. Her groom was gone. Her parents had chosen Madison. Her name had been erased from the ceremony, the reception, the story already spreading through guests' phones and whispered conversations. But numbers did not care about tears. Documents did not care who looked fragile in white lace. Money always left a trail. And Claire Bennett had built her life following trails that men like her father ignored until it was too late. At 12:18 a.m., Olivia sent one final message. Do not sleep if you can't, but don't spiral. Tomorrow we stop a signature. Claire typed back. Tomorrow we find out what Madison really stole. Then she opened the first invoice again. This time, she was not reading as a betrayed bride. She was reading as the woman Madison should have feared from the beginning. By 7 the next morning, Bennett Group already knew. Not officially. No formal announcement had been sent. No memo had explained why the wedding of Claire Bennett and Ethan Whitmore had become the wedding of Madison Bennett and Ethan Whitmore less than an hour before the ceremony. No one in leadership had confirmed that Madison was pregnant. No one had said Claire had been abandoned in a hotel service hallway while her sister walked down the aisle in her dress. But companies were like families in one dangerous way. They did not need facts to create a story. They only needed silence. And Robert Bennett's silence had always taught people what they were allowed to believe. Claire felt the first wave of attention the moment she stepped into the lobby of Bennett Tower. The security guard at the front desk straightened too quickly. The receptionist's smile faltered. Two junior analysts standing near the elevator stopped talking at the exact same time. One looked down at her phone, The other pretended to read the digital directory beside the elevator doors, though Claire knew he had worked in the building for 3 years and did not need directions. Claire walked past them in a black suit, her hair pinned back, her face bare except for a thin coat of concealer beneath eyes that had not slept. She had considered staying home for approximately 6 seconds. Then she had opened Ryan's files again and seen Madison's temporary authorization code attached to another inflated vendor payment. Grief could wait. Fraud could not. The elevator doors opened. Claire stepped inside. Just before they closed, she heard someone whisper, "That's her." Her, not Claire. Not the chief financial officer. Not the woman who had kept Bennett Group alive through 3 acquisitions, 2 lawsuits, a supply chain crisis, and Robert Bennett's stubborn refusal to modernize their internal controls. Just her, the bride who had been replaced. The elevator carried her upward in polished silence. When the doors opened on the executive floor, Claire walked directly toward Ryan Cole's office. Ryan was waiting for her. He looked worse than she did. His shirt was wrinkled, his tie crooked, his glasses slightly fogged from the coffee he clutched in both hands. His laptop was open on his desk, surrounded by printed spreadsheets, vendor contracts, login records, and 3 empty espresso cups. He stood when Claire entered. "I wasn't sure you'd come in," he said. "Neither was anyone else." Ryan winced. "I'm sorry." "Stop apologizing unless you stole the money." "I didn't." "Then show me who did." He nodded and shut the door. For the next 40 minutes, Ryan walked her through the trail. It was worse in daylight. Last night, the numbers had looked suspicious. Now, arranged across Ryan's office wall in color-coded printouts, they looked deliberate. "The first irregular payment went out 8 weeks ago," Ryan said, pointing to a line near the top of the timeline. "Small amount, $28,000, coded as a floral deposit." Claire scanned the line. "The floral contract didn't require a second deposit." "Correct. But the invoice was formatted to look like an add-on for imported arrangements. White orchids, specialty roses, refrigerated transport. There were no orchids." "No." Ryan moved to the next sheet. Then came the media vendor. 72,000, then transportation, then hospitality. Each one small enough not to trigger executive review because they were grouped under approved wedding event spending. Madison's temporary authorization. Yes, your father gave her event-level access. Someone expanded that access. Who? Ryan hesitated. Ryan. The change was entered through an administrator override. Claire looked up sharply. Whose? Your father's master authorization. Claire's jaw tightened. Robert would never personally enter a system change like that. He barely remembered his own secure token unless his assistant placed it in his hand. If his authorization had been used, then either he had approved it verbally and someone else had executed the change, or someone had used his access without permission. Given the past 24 hours, Claire no longer trusted the difference. "Keep going," she said. Ryan swallowed. The larger payments began after the temporary access expansion. 3 vendors received most of the money. 2 are shells. The third appears real at first, but its registered address is a rented mailbox. Claire looked at the vendor name, Vale Strategic Concepts LLC. Something moved coldly through her. "Vol," she said. Ryan nodded. "That's what I wanted to show you." He clicked open a corporate filing. The official owner was another entity, which was owned by a trust, which was managed through a registered agent. It was the kind of structure designed to bore people into giving up, but Claire did not get bored by structures. She followed them. "Who is behind it?" she asked. Ryan clicked again. A driver's license scan appeared in an archived bank verification file. Lucas Vale, male, 31. Dark hair, narrow face. Expensive watch visible at the edge of the scan as if he had not bothered to crop it out. "I don't know who he is," Ryan said. But the company received multiple payments tied to Madison's access. Claire stared at the name. Lucas Vale. It meant nothing to her. Yet. "Send this to Olivia." "I already did." "Good." Ryan looked at her carefully. "Claire, there's another problem." She almost laughed. Of course there is. He pulled up a second set of logs. Some of the payment approvals were routed through Madison, some through the expanded event authorization. But 2 vendor creations and 1 transfer review used your secondary code. We discussed that last night. I didn't authorize them. I believe you. You sound like there's a but. The timestamps can help prove you didn't enter them, but to someone who doesn't understand the system, it will look bad. Especially if someone frames it as you retaliating after what happened with Madison. Claire looked at him slowly. You think she plans to accuse me? Ryan did not answer fast enough. Claire's voice dropped. Ryan, I think someone wants a path where, if the money is discovered, the blame can move away from Madison and toward me, and maybe me. He clicked again. A transfer batch appeared on screen with Ryan's electronic review mark beside it. His face tightened. I didn't approve this either, he said. That signature is mine, but I didn't place it there. Claire stared at the screen. Madison was not just stealing, she was building an exit. And every exit needed a door to close behind someone else. Before Claire could speak, her office phone rang. Ryan flinched. Claire glanced at the caller ID. Robert Bennett. She answered from Ryan's desk. Yes? Come to my office, her father said. His voice was controlled, clipped, already displeased. I'm with Ryan reviewing financial irregularities. Now, Claire. The line went dead. Ryan looked at her. Claire straightened. Print everything. Claire. Print it. Save it twice. Send 1 copy to Olivia, 1 to your personal drive, and don't leave your laptop unattended. Ryan went pale. You think someone would? I think someone already has. Claire walked to her father's office without knocking. Robert stood behind his desk, one hand braced on the polished mahogany surface. Diane sat on the sofa with a tissue folded in her lap. Ethan stood near the window, jaw tight, eyes tired, and Madison sat beside Diane in a soft white dress, her blonde hair loose around her shoulders, one hand resting protectively over her stomach. Claire stopped just inside the door. For 1 second, the sight struck her with such absurd force that she almost smiled. Madison had stolen her wedding dress yesterday. Today, she had chosen white again. Of course she had. Robert's eyes moved over Claire's suit. You shouldn't be here. Claire closed the door behind her. Good morning to you, too. This is not a joke. No, money disappearing from the company usually isn't. Madison made a soft sound and leaned closer to Diane. Diane immediately wrapped an arm around her. Ethan's expression hardened. Claire, this needs to stop. Claire looked at him. You don't know what this is. I know you're accusing Madison of things because you're hurt. Claire turned to her father. Did you call me here for a family lecture or a financial review? Robert's face darkened. Do not take that tone with me. The company has suspicious payments tied to wedding expenses, shell vendors, unauthorized access expansion, and forged approvals. What tone would you prefer? Madison's eyes filled with tears. Daddy, she whispered. I told you she would do this. Claire looked at her. Madison lowered her face like a wounded saint. Robert sighed heavily. Madison told us you confronted her last night. I asked whether she was pregnant. Diane looked horrified. Claire, I also asked whether she timed the announcement intentionally. Ethan stepped forward. She was terrified. She was prepared. Madison began to cry harder. I knew she would hate me, but I didn't think she would try to destroy me. Claire laughed once under her breath. Robert slammed his palm on the desk. Enough. The room went silent. Robert turned to Claire with the expression he wore when dismissing incompetent executives. I understand you are in pain, he said. I understand yesterday was difficult. Difficult, Claire repeated. But your personal feelings cannot interfere with company operations. You cannot use Bennett Group resources to pursue a vendetta against your sister. Claire stared at him. Is that what you think this is? I think you are not currently capable of objectivity. Claire felt something inside her sharpen. Ryan found the transfers. I will speak to Ryan. You should. He has the records. Madison lifted her head slightly. Records can be misunderstood. Claire's gaze snapped to her. Madison's eyes were wet, but beneath them, for a fraction of a second, Claire saw a calculation. Robert opened a folder on his desk. I reviewed a preliminary internal alert this morning, he said. Your secondary approval code appears on questionable vendor entries. Claire went still. That had moved fast. Too fast. Ryan had only discovered the pattern hours ago. If Robert already had a preliminary alert, then someone had pushed it toward him before Claire could control the context. Madison wiped her eyes. I didn't want to believe it. Claire looked at her sister. How generous of you. Diane gasped. Claire, stop it. Madison's voice shook. When I found out about the baby, I knew you'd be angry, but I never imagined you would try to make it look like I stole from Dad. Claire stared. There it was, the frame beginning to close. Robert's voice turned colder. Until this matter is reviewed, I am suspending your access to all Bennett Group financial systems. Claire did not move. Diane whispered, Robert. She needs rest, Robert said, not taking his eyes off Claire. And the company needs distance from this personal conflict. The company needs its CFO, Claire said. The company needs stability. You are confusing silence with stability. I am protecting the business. No, Claire said. You are protecting Madison. Madison sobbed. Diane hugged her. Ethan looked away. Robert's face flushed. Security will escort you to your office to collect personal items. Claire's chest went cold. For years, she had been the one her father called when banks wanted answers, when contracts stalled, when audits went sideways. She had missed birthdays, holidays, vacations. She had flown home with the flu because Robert said the Singapore deal could not wait. She had stayed in the office until dawn while Madison cried over breakups, and Diane told Claire not to make her sister feel guilty by mentioning work. Now Madison cried once, and Robert stripped Claire of the keys to the company she had protected. Claire nodded slowly. All right. Her calm seemed to unsettle him. Claire, no. You've made your decision. She looked at Madison. Again. Madison lowered her eyes, but her hand tightened over her stomach. Claire turned to leave. At the door, Ethan said her name. She paused but did not look back. You need help, he said softly. This isn't you. Claire turned then. This is exactly me, she said. You just never needed to fear it before. She left before any of them could answer. Security did not touch her. That would have been too obvious, too ugly. Robert preferred humiliation wrapped in procedure. 2 guards stood outside her office while she collected her laptop charger, a framed photo from a charity gala, 3 notebooks, and the small stone paperweight Olivia had given her after Claire closed her first major financing deal. Several employees watched from the hall, pretending not to. Ryan appeared near the elevator, pale and furious. They can't do this, he whispered. They just did. I saved the files. Good. I sent them to Olivia. Good. And Claire, he lowered his voice. Someone accessed the internal alert system before Robert called you. The alert was drafted under anonymous compliance submission. Can you trace it? I'm trying. Don't do it from the company network. Ryan nodded. The elevator doors opened. Claire stepped inside with a cardboard box in her arms. The last thing she saw before the doors closed was Madison standing at the far end of the hall beside Ethan, one hand on her stomach, watching Claire be removed from her own company. She looked fragile. She looked tragic. She looked victorious. By noon, the story had mutated again. Claire did not have access to the company server anymore, but she did not need it to know. Her phone lit up with messages from acquaintances who did not want to ask directly, but wanted to circle close enough to smell blood. I heard you're taking time away. Hope you're okay. So, sorry about everything. Families are complicated. Is it true Madison is high risk? Thinking of you during this transition. Claire set the phone face down. Olivia arrived at her apartment at 12:30 with 2 coffees, a leather briefcase, and the expression of a woman preparing to go to war. She took one look at Claire's box from the office and said, Your father is an idiot. Claire accepted the coffee. Legally speaking, morally, strategically, and with deep personal emphasis. Claire almost smiled. Olivia set her briefcase on the dining table and began removing documents. I verified the clinic name on Madison's paperwork. Claire straightened. And? The clinic existed, but it changed ownership last year. The address on the form is outdated. The current practice has no Madison Bennett in its system. Claire leaned forward. The doctor who supposedly signed the pregnancy confirmation had his license suspended 18 months ago for falsifying insurance records, Olivia continued. He is not practicing there. The record number on Madison's form does not match the clinic's format. And the ultrasound image, if we can call that blurry mess an image, appears to be a stock scan used in a prenatal brochure from 2019. Claire stared at her. Olivia pushed a copy across the table. The pregnancy wasn't created in Madison's body, she said. It was created on paper. For the first time in 24 hours, Claire felt air enter her lungs fully. She had known. But knowing and proving were different things. Can we use this? Carefully, the clinic can confirm they have no record. But medical privacy laws mean they won't give us much without formal process. However, the fake license number and invalid doctor's signature are useful. We can establish the document is unreliable. Enough to stop the signing? Maybe not alone. Claire's brief hope faded. Olivia watched her. But this isn't alone. We have the vendor trail, the addendum, the forged access logs, and now the fake pregnancy documents. We need one more thing tying Madison to intent. Lucas Vale? Olivia nodded. I pulled preliminary records. Lucas owns or controls at least 2 entities through intermediaries. One received wedding vendor payments. Another has a foreign banking relationship. Claire's eyes narrowed. Foreign where? Cayman routing account, then likely onward. I'm still checking. Madison plans to move the money. Looks that way. Claire stood and walked to the window. Below, the city continued as if her life had not become evidence. Olivia's phone buzzed. She checked it. That's from my investigator, she said. Claire turned. Olivia opened an image and angled the phone toward her. The photograph was grainy, taken from a restaurant security camera. Madison sat in a back booth with a man Claire recognized from the driver's license scan. Lucas Vale. He leaned close to Madison, one hand over hers. The timestamp was 2 days before the wedding. Olivia swiped. Another image. Hotel lobby. Madison and Lucas near the elevators. Another. Parking garage. Lucas holding Madison's waist while she laughed up at him. Another. Airport cafe from 3 weeks earlier. Claire stared at the screen. Madison had told everyone Ethan was the man who had gotten her pregnant during one drunken night. But Madison had been meeting Lucas. Secretly. Repeatedly. Intimately. She doesn't love Ethan, Claire said. No, Olivia replied. I don't think Ethan is the romance in this story. Claire looked at the equity documents on the table. He's the signature. Olivia's expression hardened. Exactly. Across town, Madison was proving that point. Ethan stood in the private sitting room of the Bennett family home, staring at the equity packet Robert's legal assistant had delivered in a sealed folder. He had not slept either. His wedding ring felt strange on his hand. Madison stood behind him in the doorway, wearing another soft white dress. Since yesterday, she had dressed only in white, as if innocence were a uniform she could put on and remove at will. Are you angry with me? She asked. Ethan looked up. I'm trying to understand. Her eyes filled immediately. He hated how quickly it happened. Or maybe he hated how quickly it worked. I didn't ask for any of this, she whispered. You waited until the wedding. I was scared. You keep saying that. Because it's true. Madison came closer, one hand on her stomach. Do you know what Claire said to me? She asked if I was even pregnant. Like I would lie about our baby. Ethan flinched at our. Madison saw it. She always saw the small openings. She wants you to doubt me, Madison said. Because if you doubt me, then what she lost yesterday becomes less humiliating. She can tell herself I'm evil instead of accepting that you chose the baby. Ethan looked down at the documents. I need to read these. Of course, Madison's voice softened. You should. You're smart. The compliment was perfectly placed. Ethan had spent 6 years beside Claire, always aware that she understood the financial machinery of Bennett Group better than he did. Claire never made him feel stupid exactly, but she moved through contracts and projections with a speed that reminded him he was entering her world, not the other way around. Madison, by contrast, looked at him as if he were the only person strong enough to save her. It was intoxicating and dangerous. "This proxy clause," he said, "it gives you authority over my equity rights if I sign." Madison's mouth trembled. "Only to protect the baby. I don't even have the shares yet." "But you will. Robert wants you in the family. And Claire," she looked down, "Claire is trying to make sure I have nothing, that our child has nothing. She says the documents should be verified." Madison went very still. Then her face crumpled. "She said that to you?" "Madison, no, I understand." She stepped back. "You think I trapped you." "I didn't say that. But you're thinking it." "I'm trying to do the right thing." "The right thing?" Madison laughed through tears. "You left Claire yesterday for this child. Do you understand that? You gave up everything because you believed our baby deserved a father. If you start doubting me now, then what was all that pain for?" Ethan looked at her. That question entered him like a hook. If Madison was lying, then he had destroyed Claire for nothing. If Madison was lying, then every look in that ballroom, every whisper, every tear, every choice he had made had been not tragic, but foolish. And Ethan Whitmore could bear being tragic. He could not bear being a fool. Madison stepped closer and placed his hand over her stomach. "There is a baby," she whispered. "And this baby needs you to be strong enough not to let Claire punish us for existing." Ethan closed his eyes. Madison watched his face. When he opened them, the doubt had not vanished, but guilt had covered it. For Madison, that was enough. Claire met Madison in person at 4 that afternoon. It was not planned, at least not by Claire. She had gone to the Grand Ashford with Olivia's investigator to request a copy of hotel corridor camera logs through the appropriate legal channel. The hotel's general manager, terrified of being dragged into a Bennett scandal, had promised to cooperate after speaking to counsel. Claire was leaving through the side corridor when Madison appeared near the staircase, alone. No Diane, no Ethan, no photographers, no soft audience to protect her. For the first time since the dressing room, Claire saw her sister without witnesses. Madison smiled faintly. "You look tired," she said. Claire stopped. "You look busy." Madison touched the railing. "I heard Dad suspended you." "Of course you did." "I'm sorry." "No, you're not." Madison tilted her head. "You keep saying that like it matters." Claire walked closer, stopping several feet away. "I know about Lucas." For 1 second, Madison's face changed. It was small, barely visible, but Claire saw the crack. "Who?" Madison asked. "Lucas Vale, the man behind Vale Strategic Concepts, the man receiving money through wedding invoices, the man you met 2 days before my wedding." Madison's expression smoothed. "You sound paranoid." "I know about the clinic, too." Madison's fingers tightened around the railing. Claire continued. "Outdated address, suspended doctor, fake record number, no valid blood test. You have no right to dig into my medical history." "You don't have a medical history? You have props." Madison's eyes flashed. There she was. Not the wounded girl, not the fragile mother. The thing underneath. "You always were good with paperwork," Madison said softly. "And you always thought tears could replace it." Madison stepped down one stair, bringing herself slightly lower than Claire, forcing Claire to look down at her. Even positioning was performance with Madison. "Do you know what your problem is?" Madison asked. "You think being right means you win." Claire said nothing. Madison's smile returned, thin and cold. "But if no one believes you, Claire, your truth is just noise." Claire felt the words settle between them. A threat. A warning. A confession wrapped in philosophy. "You're going to lose," Claire said. Madison's eyes moved toward the camera dome in the corner of the corridor. Claire followed the glance too late. Then Madison whispered, "Not before you do." She reached for Claire's wrist. Claire pulled back instinctively. Madison let out a sharp cry and stumbled backward. It happened so quickly that Claire barely understood the motion. Madison's heel slipped off the edge of the stair, but the fall was wrong. Too controlled, too angled. She twisted sideways, one hand on the railing, then collapsed onto the landing below with a cry that tore through the corridor. "My baby!" Claire froze. The elevator doors opened at the far end. Ethan stepped out first. Diane behind him. Robert behind her. For one impossible second, the entire scene arranged itself like a photograph Madison had designed. Madison on the floor, white dress spread around her, both hands clutching her stomach. Claire standing above her near the stairs. The camera angled toward Claire's back, not Madison's hands. Ethan ran. "Madison!" Diane screamed and dropped to her knees. "Sweetheart!" Madison sobbed. "I only asked her to stop. I only asked her not to ruin tonight." Claire's mouth went dry. "Madison," she said quietly. "Don't." Madison looked up at her with wet, terrified eyes. "Why do you hate me this much?" Diane turned on Claire with a sound Claire had never heard from her mother before. It was not disappointment. It was disgust. "How could you?" Claire stepped back. "I didn't touch her." Ethan rose slowly. His face was white with anger. "She's pregnant," he said. "She threw herself down?" The word sounded weak even to Claire. Robert's voice cut through the chaos. "Call a doctor." Madison cried harder. "No hospital, please. I don't want reporters. I don't want everyone to know." Of course not, Claire thought. Hospitals created real records. Diane stroked Madison's hair. "We'll take you to Dr. Ellison, quietly, privately." Claire looked at her mother. "Who is Dr. Ellison?" Diane glared at her. "Do not speak." The slap came so suddenly Claire did not see Diane move. Her mother's palm struck her cheek with a crack that silenced even Madison for half a second. Claire's head turned with the force. Heat spread across her face. No one moved. Diane stared at her own hand as if shocked by what it had done. Then Madison whimpered, and Diane turned back to her younger daughter. Claire touched her cheek slowly. Ethan looked at her as if she were a stranger. Robert pointed toward the exit. "Leave." Claire lowered her hand. "Dad." "Leave," he repeated. "Before I have security remove you." Claire looked from him to Diane, from Diane to Ethan, from Ethan to Madison. Madison's face was buried against Diane's shoulder. But over Diane's arm, one eye was open. Watching Claire, Claire left. Outside the hotel, Olivia was already calling. "What happened?" Olivia demanded the moment Claire answered. Claire stood beneath the awning where she had waited for a car the day before. "She framed me." Olivia went quiet. "Then, tell me everything." Claire did. By the time she finished, Olivia's voice had become dangerously calm. "Go home. Do not speak to anyone else. I'm pulling the hotel camera. The angle is bad. I'll decide that." She planned it. "I believe you." The words hit harder than Claire expected. "I believe you." 3 words her own family had not given her. That evening, Robert's office released a private internal notice. Claire Bennett would be taking an immediate leave of absence due to personal circumstances, and an internal review concerning financial irregularities in event-related expenditures. Ryan forwarded the notice to Claire from his personal email with one line. "They're trying to tie this to you." 5 minutes later, he called. His voice was shaking. "My access was restricted." Claire stood in her kitchen, phone pressed to her ear. "When?" 10 minutes ago. "Compliance flagged my review credentials. They're saying my electronic signature appears on unauthorized transfers." Claire closed her eyes. Madison had moved fast. "She's setting us both up," Ryan said. "Yes." "What do we do?" Claire looked at Olivia's files spread across the table. Fake clinic documents, vendor trails, Lucas's corporate filings, hotel requests, equity addendum, screenshots of Madison with Lucas. "We keep going. They'll fire me." "They might. They could prosecute me. They could try." Ryan made a sound that was almost a laugh and almost panic. "That is not comforting." "It wasn't meant to be." "Claire," she softened. "Ryan, listen to me. If you stay quiet, she will put the whole thing on you. If you talk, you at least become a witness instead of a scapegoat." He breathed shakily. "I didn't steal anything." "I know. What if no one else believes that?" Claire looked towards the window, seeing Madison's face in the hotel corridor, the eye open over Diane's shoulder. "Then we make belief irrelevant. The phrase belonged to Olivia. Now it belonged to Claire, too. At 9:30 p.m., Olivia arrived again, this time with a slim folder and no coffee. That bad? Claire asked. Worse and better. Claire took the folder. Inside were 2 airline reservations. Madison Bennett, Lucas Vale, both booked on the same flight leaving Chicago late the next night, a few hours after the signing reception. First class, one way. Destination? Miami, with a connecting private charter request under Lucas's company account. No, Ethan. Claire stared at the pages. Not because she was surprised, because proof had weight. Olivia placed a second page on top. These came from a recovered message thread my investigator accessed through a device backup source connected to Lucas's business account. We need to authenticate before using them formally, but look, Claire read. After he signs, I don't have to pretend anymore. Another message. Claire will be blamed. Her code is already in the logs. Another? Ryan too, if needed. Accountants always look guilty when numbers go missing. Then Lucas. Money first, equity after. Don't let Whitmore hesitate. Madison's reply. He won't. Men like Ethan would rather sign than admit they ruined their lives for nothing. Claire sat down slowly. There it was. The whole shape of it. Madison had not panicked in the bridal suite. She had launched. The pregnancy was fake. The medical papers were fake. The wedding crisis had forced Ethan into marriage. The marriage would pressure Ethan into signing the equity documents. The proxy clause would put Madison near control. The vendor payments would move money to Lucas. The forged codes would point to Claire and Ryan. The staircase scene would make Claire look unstable, jealous, violent. Then Madison would leave the country, or at least leave the jurisdiction, with Lucas and the money, while Ethan stood in the wreckage holding a wedding ring and the humiliation of being used. Claire closed her eyes. For one terrible moment, she saw herself in the back room again, hearing the wedding march through the walls while Madison wore her dress. That had not been the end of the theft. It had been the opening act. Olivia sat across from her. Claire. Claire opened her eyes. Olivia's expression was hard, but not unkind. Tomorrow's signing is the center. Everything points there. If Madison gets Ethan's signature and the pending transfer releases, this becomes much harder to stop. Claire looked at the flight reservations again. She plans to leave right after. Yes. And if we accuse her before the signing, she cries, claims you're escalating, and Robert blocks us. If we wait too long, she gets the signature. Claire nodded slowly. So, we need to catch her at the moment she reaches for it. Olivia's eyes sharpened. Yes. Claire stood and walked to the window. The city lights flickered below. Somewhere in that city, Madison was probably rehearsing tears. Ethan was probably staring at documents he did not understand and calling his hesitation morality. Robert was probably telling himself he had saved the family name. Diane was probably sitting beside Madison's bed, whispering that everything would be all right. And Ryan was afraid he would go to prison, and Claire was supposed to be broken. That was Madison's real mistake. She had mistaken public humiliation for defeat. Claire turned back to Olivia. What do you need from me? Everything you remember. Every conversation. Every time Madison asked about Ethan's equity. Every time she mentioned corporate access. Every detail from the bridal suite. And tomorrow, discipline. Claire almost smiled. I can do discipline. I know. That's what scares people. Claire looked down at the evidence on the table. The fake baby. The missing money. The lover waiting at the airport. The signature Ethan had not yet given. Her sister had built a trap out of family loyalty, male pride, maternal guilt, and corporate greed. And somehow, almost brilliantly, she had placed Claire in the center of it as the villain. The jealous sister, the abandoned bride, the unstable executive, the perfect scapegoat. Claire picked up Madison's flight reservation and folded it once. Then again, her voice was quiet when she spoke. Yesterday, she stole my wedding. Olivia watched her. Today, she tried to steal my name. Claire placed the folded paper on the table. Tomorrow, she learns I don't need either one to destroy her. By noon, the Grand Ashford Hotel had been transformed again. Yesterday, it had been decorated for a wedding. Today, it was being dressed for a correction. That was the word Robert Bennett used when he spoke to the hotel manager, to his private security team, to the board members who had been invited back under the careful language of a small family reception. A correction, a stabilization, a private gesture of unity after an unfortunate misunderstanding. Not a stolen wedding, not a fraudulent pregnancy, not a daughter erased in public so another daughter could wear her dress. A correction. The ballroom staff worked quickly beneath the chandeliers, replacing wilted flowers, clearing the traces of yesterday's reception, resetting the long aisle with fresh white petals. The altar had been removed, but the raised platform remained. In its place stood a polished signing table draped in cream linen. On it, there would be a leather document folder, 2 fountain pens, a crystal water glass, and enough lies to ruin several lives. At 7 that evening, Ethan Whitmore would sign his equity onboarding packet. After that, if Madison had her way, he would sign the proxy addendum. After that, the pending vendor transfers would release. After that, Madison Bennett and Lucas Vale would leave Chicago, and Claire would remain behind as the jealous sister who had lost her fiancé, attacked a pregnant woman, and possibly helped steal from her own company. It was almost elegant. Claire hated elegance when it was used to hide rot. She stood in Olivia Grant's office, watching Olivia pin documents to a glass wall with magnetic clips. Olivia's office looked nothing like Bennett Group. There were no family portraits, no polished mahogany, no gold-framed awards arranged to intimidate visitors. Everything was clean, sharp, and functional. Glass, steel, books, evidence. Claire liked it more than she expected. Olivia stood barefoot on a low rolling chair, attaching copies of financial transfers to the top row. "Get down before you break your neck," Claire said. Olivia did not look back. "I have survived 3 federal judges and 1 deposition with a man who said, 'With all due respect,' 17 times in 2 hours. This chair does not frighten me." Ryan Cole sat at the conference table, pale and silent, both hands wrapped around a paper cup of coffee he had not touched. He had arrived 20 minutes earlier after driving in circles for half an hour to make sure no one was following him. Claire had not mocked him for that, not after seeing the photographs. Someone had shattered the back window of Ryan's car sometime before dawn. Nothing had been stolen. His laptop had not been inside. His briefcase was untouched. The message had been obvious precisely because it was unnecessary. A warning did not need to be clever to work. Olivia climbed down from the chair and studied the wall. The evidence had become a map. Wedding invoices, vendor payments, Vale strategic concepts, Lucas Vale's corporate filings, Madison's temporary authorization, Claire's forged secondary code, Ryan's copied electronic signature, the fake pregnancy document, the invalid doctor license, photos of Madison and Lucas, the flight reservations, the recovered messages, the equity addendum, the timing of the pending transfer. Every piece pointed to the same place. Tonight's signing. Olivia tapped the folder containing the equity packet. "We are not going into that room to make accusations. Accusations are for people without leverage. We are going in with process." Ryan looked up. "Process? Law enforcement likes process. Judges like process. Banks like process. Your average family patriarch does not like process, which is how we know it's useful." Claire leaned against the table. "Will the police act?" Olivia's expression shifted. Not uncertainty. Calculation. "I spoke to Detective Mara Alvarez in financial crimes this morning," she said. "The vendor trail is enough to open an inquiry. The forged medical document strengthens motive. The flight reservations show risk of flight. The proxy addendum shows potential financial gain from the false pregnancy claim. The problem is timing." Claire already knew the answer, but she asked anyway. "They need Madison to make a move," Olivia nodded. "They need the attempted completion of the scheme. If she is simply near Ethan while he signs documents, her attorney can argue family chaos, misunderstanding, bad bookkeeping, emotional distress." Ryan gave a bitter laugh. "Emotional distress. That's convenient." "It always is," Olivia said. But if Ethan signs the proxy addendum under the premise that Madison is pregnant and the transfer release is tied to that signing, then we have a cleaner moment. Fraud moving from preparation to execution. Claire looked at the document packet. So we wait until he is about to sign. Yes. And if he signs too fast? Then we stop the room before the document leaves the table. Ryan shifted in his chair. This sounds insane. It is insane, Olivia said. But it is also the first thing in this story that may be legally useful. Claire turned towards the window. Chicago looked bright and indifferent beneath the afternoon sun. Yesterday's rain had vanished, leaving the city sharp-edged and glittering. She wondered if Madison had looked outside that morning and taken it as a sign. A clear day for escape. Claire's phone buzzed. Ethan? She stared at the name. Olivia saw it. Don't answer unless you can stay calm. I can stay calm. That is not the same as saying you won't commit emotional homicide. Claire answered. What is it? There was a pause. Ethan's voice came through low and strained. I need to see you. Claire closed her eyes briefly. No. Claire, please. That word has done too much damage in this family. I have questions. That made her open her eyes. About what? The documents, Madison, Lucas Vale. Ryan looked up sharply. Olivia's gaze locked on Claire's face. Claire kept her voice flat. Where are you? Outside your building. Of course you are. I didn't know where else to go. That was such an Ethan thing to say. He had always had a gift for making his lack of imagination sound like sincerity. Claire looked at Olivia. Olivia shook her head once. Claire said, Meet me in the lobby of Olivia's building. 15 minutes, public space. 10 minutes only. Claire, 10 minutes, Ethan. She ended the call. Olivia folded her arms. That is not what I advised. No, Claire said. But if he is hesitating, Madison will know. I need to see how much doubt is in him. And if he warns her, he already might. Olivia's mouth tightened. Fine. I'm sitting 20 feet away. I assumed you would. Ryan stood. Should I leave? No, Claire said. Stay here. Back up everything again. I already backed it up twice. Make it 3. For the first time all day, Ryan almost smiled. 15 minutes later, Ethan Whitmore looked less like a groom than a man standing at the edge of his own reflection, afraid to see what stared back. He waited in the lobby beneath a wall of abstract art, wearing the same tailored restraint he had always worn in public. Dark suit, open collar, wedding ring visible. He turned when Claire approached, and something like relief crossed his face. She hated that part of her still recognized his relief. Olivia sat in a chair near the reception desk, pretending to read an email on her phone. Claire stopped several feet from Ethan. You have 10 minutes? He looked at her cheek first. The faint mark from Diane's slap had faded beneath concealer, but not entirely. His expression tightened. Your mother hit you. Claire's voice was cool. You noticed. I didn't know what to do. That has become your entire personality. He flinched. Good. She had not meant to comfort him. Ethan looked down. Madison said you grabbed her. Madison said many things. She said you frightened her. Did she mention Lucas Vale? His jaw moved. Claire watched him carefully. She said Lucas was an old friend, Ethan said. She said you found some photo and twisted it. Did she say why she has a one-way flight booked with him tonight after the signing? Ethan went still. For 1 second, the lobby seemed to quiet around them. What? Claire took a folded copy from her purse and handed it to him. He opened it. His eyes moved across the page once. Then again, Madison Bennett, Lucas Vale. Departure time. No Ethan Whitmore. The color drained from his face. This could be fake. It could be, Claire said. But it isn't. Ethan looked up. Why would she use you? He swallowed. Claire stepped closer, lowering her voice. Because you are useful. Because my father wants you in the company. Because your signature creates access. Because a fake baby makes you too guilty to ask intelligent questions. Because if you admit she lied, then you have to admit you destroyed me for nothing. His face twisted. That's not fair. There it is again. Claire, no. You came to me. So listen. Her voice stayed low, but every word cut clean. I am not asking you to come back. I do not want you back. That door closed when you stood in my bridal suite and chose Madison's tears over the woman you said you loved." Pain crossed his face, but she did not stop. "I am telling you that tonight, when she asks you to sign that proxy addendum, you should understand what you are signing. You are not protecting a child. You are handing a con artist the tools she needs to finish what she started." Ethan stared at the flight reservation. What if there is a child? Claire almost pitied him then. Almost. "Then ask for a blood test before you sign away anything." He looked away. That was enough answer. He did not want truth. He wanted absolution. Claire took the paper back. "Madison does not need your love, Ethan. She needs your pen." His hands curled at his sides. "You think I'm stupid?" "No," Claire said. "I think you're proud." Proud men are easier to fool because they would rather keep walking into a lie than turn around and admit where they entered it. His eyes flashed. "And you're perfect?" "No, I'm done being sacrificed." For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Ethan said quietly, "If you're wrong, you will destroy what's left of your family." Claire looked at him with a sadness so calm it was almost mercy. "If I'm right, they already did." She walked away. Olivia fell into step beside her at the elevator. "Well?" she asked. He doubts her. "Enough not to sign?" Claire watched the elevator doors slide open. "No." Olivia's face hardened. "Then Madison will press harder." She was right. Madison knew Ethan had met Claire before Ethan returned to the Bennett family suite at the Grand Ashford. She knew because she had asked one of Robert's drivers to tell her if Ethan left without her. By the time Ethan entered the suite, Madison was sitting by the window in a cream silk robe, her hair loose, a pale blanket over her knees. Diane sat beside her, holding a cup of tea Madison had not touched. On the side table lay a fresh medical note from Dr. Ellison, the private physician Diane trusted, because he asked very few questions when dealing with wealthy families. The note said Madison needed calm. Madison had always known how useful calm could be when she wanted everyone else to panic. Ethan paused at the door. Diane looked up. "Where were you?" Ethan's eyes moved to Madison. Madison smiled faintly. "It's all right, Mom. He went to see Claire." Diane stiffened. Ethan said, "I needed to ask her some things." Madison's lower lip trembled. There it was. Not too much. Never too much at first. Just enough to make a man feel the crack before he saw the wound. "About me?" she asked. Ethan closed the door. "She showed me a flight reservation." Madison blinked. Diane frowned. "What flight reservation?" Madison gave a small, confused laugh. "What?" "With Lucas Vale," Ethan said. The name hung in the suite. Diane looked between them. "Who is Lucas Vale?" Madison's eyes filled. "An old friend," she whispered. "Someone I asked for help when I thought I would have to leave Chicago." Ethan did not move. Madison looked down at her lap. "Before I told you about the baby, I thought I had no choice. I thought everyone would hate me. I thought you would hate me. Lucas said he could help me disappear if I needed to." Diane gasped softly. "Oh, sweetheart." Madison continued, voice breaking. "I didn't book the flight because I wanted to leave you. I booked it because I was scared I would be forced to raise our child alone." Ethan closed his eyes. The explanation was absurdly simple. That was its power. It gave him somewhere to rest, somewhere that did not require him to admit Claire might be right. Madison stood slowly, one hand on her stomach. Diane reached to help her, but Madison shook her head bravely and walked to Ethan. "Claire wants you to doubt me," she said. "She wants you to see me as some kind of monster because then she doesn't have to face what happened." "What did happen?" Ethan asked quietly. Madison's eyes flashed, but tears covered the spark. "You were drunk," she whispered. "I was stupid. We made a mistake. And now I am the one carrying the proof of it." Ethan's face tightened with shame. Madison reached for his hand and placed it over her stomach, just as she had done before. "Tonight, your signature tells everyone you are not ashamed of this child." "Madison." "No, please listen." Her tears spilled over. "Your signature tells your father, my father, Claire, everyone, that our baby will not be treated like a dirty secret. If you refuse now, after everything that happened yesterday, then Claire wins. She gets to say I was nothing but a mistake. Diane began crying silently on the sofa. Ethan looked at Madison's hand over his. He wanted to pull away. He did not. Madison saw the surrender before he did. "You don't have to love me yet," she whispered, "but protect your child." There it was. The word that closed every door. Child. By 5 o'clock, Olivia had obtained enough confirmations to move. The bank compliance contact had acknowledged suspicious vendor activity and agreed to delay any large outgoing transfer pending law enforcement review if presented with a formal request. The current clinic at the address on Madison's pregnancy document confirmed the record number was invalid and that the named doctor was not affiliated with them. The hotel's security office had preserved the corridor footage from the wedding morning and the staircase incident. The private investigator had authenticated enough of the Madison-Lucas message chain to establish preliminary relevance. And Detective Mara Alvarez had agreed to attend the signing with 2 officers in plain clothes, provided Olivia understood one thing clearly. "We are not your theatrical ending," the detective said in Olivia's conference room. Detective Alvarez was in her 40s, with short dark hair, direct eyes, and the kind of calm that did not perform itself. She had listened to Olivia's summary without visible shock. Claire respected her for that. "This is not about humiliating your sister," Alvarez continued, looking at Claire. "This is about preventing a financial crime and preserving evidence. If the room becomes emotional, you let me manage it." Claire nodded. "Understood. If she starts crying, you do not engage." "I won't." "If your father orders you out, you do not argue." Olivia glanced at Claire. Claire said, "I won't argue." The detective looked unconvinced but continued. "We need the document present, the signature process underway, and confirmation of the transfer trigger. Mr. Cole will identify the packet and the relevant clause." Ryan nodded, hands clenched in his lap. "Yes." "Ms. Grant will present the evidentiary basis?" Olivia nodded. "And you," Alvarez said to Claire, "will not make speeches." Claire met her eyes. "No promises about brevity." Olivia sighed. The detective did not smile, but something in her expression shifted. "I mean it." "So do I." Alvarez studied her for another second. "Your sister is counting on you reacting like a wounded bride. Do not give her that." The words landed exactly where they needed to. Claire looked down at her hands. Yesterday, they had trembled when Diane took the dress. Today, they were steady. "I won't," she said. At 5:40, Ryan received the email that nearly broke him. It came from an anonymous address, but the attachment was personal. A photograph of his apartment door, then a second image. His younger sister leaving that same apartment building that morning with her 6-year-old son. No message, no threat. It did not need one. Ryan stood so quickly, his chair hit the wall. "I'm done," he said. Claire rose. "Ryan." No, Claire. They know where my sister lives." Olivia took the phone from him and looked at the images. Her face turned glacial. "Forward this to Detective Alvarez." Ryan was breathing too fast. "I can't do this." Claire came around the table. "Yes, you can." "You don't understand." "I do." "No, you don't. It's your family, your war, your sister. I am an accountant. I didn't sign up to have people watching my nephew." Claire let him say it. He needed to. Then she said quietly, "You're right. You didn't sign up for this. Neither did I. But Madison picked you because she thought you were useful and disposable. She used your signature because she needed a body to throw into the fire if the money trail was found." Ryan shook his head. "If you walk away," Claire continued, "she still uses you. She still leaves your name in the logs. She still points at you when the money is gone. The only difference is that you won't be in the room when the truth starts fighting back." His eyes were wet behind his glasses. "I'm scared," he said. Claire's voice softened. "So am I." He looked at her then. Maybe it was the first time he believed that. Claire Bennett, who never broke loudly enough for anyone to notice. Claire Bennett, who had been slapped, removed, erased, accused, and still stood there in a black suit discussing evidence. "I'll do it," Ryan said hoarsely. Olivia handed him back the phone. "Good. And after this, you and your sister get police protection until Lucas is in custody." Ryan nodded. Claire placed a hand on his arm. "She doesn't get to make you the villain." He exhaled shakily. "No," he said. "She doesn't." At 6 o'clock, Robert Bennett sent the announcement. Not publicly, not to the press. Worse, to the Bennett Group Executive Board, senior leadership, and key family stakeholders. Claire read it on Olivia's phone because her own company email had been disabled. After careful consideration, Claire Bennett has been placed on administrative leave pending an internal review of event-related financial irregularities. In the interest of stability, Ethan Whitmore will be formally welcomed into the Bennett family governance structure this evening as planned. Claire read the message once, then again. There was no mention of Madison's access, no mention of forged approvals, no mention of Ryan's copied signature. Robert had not merely suspended her, he had given the world a reason to suspect her. Olivia looked ready to commit professional violence. Ryan whispered, "Claire." Claire handed the phone back. Her face had gone very still. Olivia said, "We can use this later. Retaliatory narrative, premature conclusion, failure of fiduciary oversight." Claire looked toward the evidence wall. "My father just made me the problem so he could present Ethan as the solution." "Yes," Claire breathed in slowly. For a moment, she saw Robert standing in the bridal suite, saying the ceremony had to continue. She saw Diane taking off the pearls, Madison lowering her eyes, Ethan saying he had to do the right thing. Always the same shape. Claire was the cost. Madison was the emergency. Robert was the judge. Diane was the witness who cried for the wrong daughter. Not tonight. Tonight the room would not belong to them. At 6:30, Claire changed clothes in Olivia's office bathroom. Not a dress. Not anything soft. She chose a black tailored suit, a white silk blouse, and low heels she could stand in for hours. She pinned her hair back. She wore no jewelry except a pair of small silver studs. When she came out, Olivia glanced up and nodded once. "You look terrifying." "Good." Ryan attempted a nervous smile, in a legally appropriate way. "Even better," Olivia said. Claire picked up her purse. Inside were copies of the flight reservations, a small recorder Olivia had insisted she carry, and Ethan's engagement ring. She had not planned to bring it. Then, at the last minute, she had slipped it into the inner pocket. Not because she still wanted him, because endings deserved witnesses too. At the Grand Ashford, the air smelled of white roses again. Claire hated that scent now. The hotel's public entrance was full of quiet movement. Board members arriving in dark cars, legal assistants carrying folders, private security speaking into earpieces, staff moving with trays of champagne and untouched canapes. No one called it a wedding reception. Yet, the flowers were white, the aisle had been restored, and the ballroom doors stood like a mouth waiting to swallow another lie. Claire did not enter through the front. Olivia led them through a side corridor, where Detective Alvarez and two officers waited in plain clothes. The detective looked at Claire. "Remember what I said?" "No speeches. No uncontrolled speeches." Claire almost smiled. Almost. Ryan wiped his palms on his pants. Olivia checked her watch. "We wait until the packet is on the table and the proxy addendum is presented." Alvarez nodded. "My team is positioned near the rear entrance and the service door. Hotel security has been instructed not to interfere." Claire looked towards the ballroom. Through the wall, she could hear Robert's voice. Warm, commanding, performing. "Thank you all for returning under unusual circumstances." Claire closed her eyes. There had been a time when hearing her father speak like that made her proud. Now she heard only the sound of a man arranging words over a grave. Inside the bridal preparation room, Madison stood before the mirror in Claire's wedding dress. Again, Diane had suggested something simpler, something less painful given the confusion of the previous day. Madison had lowered her eyes and said she only wanted one proper photograph, one memory that did not feel like shame. Diane had wept and agreed. Now Diane stood behind her, adjusting the lace sleeves with trembling care. "You are so pale," Diane murmured. "Are you sure you can do this?" Madison smiled faintly at the mirror. "I have to. My brave girl." Madison almost laughed. Brave. She let Diane hear a soft breath instead. "I just want everything to be right," Madison said. Diane kissed her shoulder. "It will be. Your father is handling it. Ethan will sign. After tonight, people will stop talking." No, Madison thought. After tonight, people could talk all they wanted. She would be gone. When Diane stepped into the bathroom to get tissues, Madison picked up her phone. Lucas had sent 3 messages. "Is he signing?" Madison typed, "Yes." Then Claire tried to poison him, but he's too guilty to back out. Lucas replied, "Good. Money first. Equity after. If anything shifts, blame Claire harder." Madison smiled at her reflection. The dress really was beautiful. That annoyed her more than she expected. Even stolen, it still looked like Claire's taste. Elegant, controlled, expensive, without begging to be admired. Madison had always hated that about her sister, the way Claire could own a room without pleading with it. Tonight, Madison would own the room, and then she would leave it. She slipped the phone into a hidden pocket sewn into the underskirt. Diane returned, dabbing her eyes. Madison placed a hand over her stomach. The gesture came so naturally now, she almost believed the illusion herself. Almost. In the ballroom, Ethan stood beside the signing table with the fountain pen in his hand. Robert had just finished speaking. The guests applauded softly. Not wedding applause this time. Boardroom applause. Controlled, approving, obedient. The document folder lay open. Ethan could see the first page. His name, Ethan James Whitmore. His new title. His access. His future. The thing he had wanted, though he had never allowed himself to name the hunger directly. Robert leaned close. "This is an important step. For the family. For the child. For stability." For stability. Ethan looked toward Madison, who stood near the rear doors in Claire's wedding gown, waiting for her cue to walk forward for the formal family photograph before the signing. She looked fragile. She looked beautiful. She looked like a woman everyone had already hurt enough. Then Claire's voice returned to him. "She does not need your love, Ethan. She needs your pen." His fingers tightened around the pen. Madison began walking down the aisle. Guests turned. Diane cried softly. Robert smiled with grim satisfaction. Madison placed one hand over her stomach and moved slowly, almost reverently, as if the aisle had always belonged to her. Just before she reached Ethan, the ballroom doors opened again. Not the front doors, the rear service doors. The same kind of doors Claire had been pushed behind the day before. This time she walked through them. No dress, no veil, no tears, just Claire in black, Olivia at her side, Ryan behind them, and Detective Alvarez with 2 officers following close enough to make the room understand before anyone spoke. The applause died. Madison stopped mid-step. Her hand remained on her stomach. Ethan lowered the pen. Robert's face darkened first with confusion, then with fury. Diane rose halfway from her chair. For one perfect second, nobody moved. Claire looked at Madison standing in the wedding dress for the second time. The dress Claire had bought. The dress Diane had taken. The dress Madison had turned into a flag of victory. Claire's voice carried clearly through the ballroom. "Madison," she said, "you wore my dress twice." The room held its breath. Claire took one step forward. "This time, I hope it looks good in the arrest photos." Madison's face went white. Behind Claire, Detective Alvarez moved toward the signing table. And for the first time since the wedding began, the aisle belonged to the truth. For 1 second, Madison Bennett forgot how to cry. It was the smallest mistake she had made in 2 days. Barely a pause, barely a blink, but Claire saw it. So did Olivia. Maybe even Ethan saw it, though his face had gone too pale for Claire to read clearly. He still held the fountain pen in his right hand, the expensive black pen Robert had placed beside the equity packet, as if the object itself could make the decision noble. Madison stood halfway down the aisle in Claire's wedding dress, one hand on her stomach, the other clenched at her side. The chandeliers above her cast a soft gold light across the lace sleeves and pearl buttons. She looked beautiful. That was the cruelty of it. Lies did not always look ugly. Sometimes they came wrapped in white silk, trembling under chandeliers while a room full of people felt ashamed for doubting them. Then Madison's training returned. Her mouth parted, her eyes filled, her shoulders curved inward. By the time Diane stepped into the aisle, Madison had become fragile again. "Claire," Madison whispered, voice breaking. "Why are you doing this?" Diane turned on Claire with immediate horror. "Not here. Please, Claire, not here." Robert came down from the platform, face dark with fury. "This is a private family event," he said, looking first at Claire, then at Olivia, then at Detective Alvarez and the officers behind them. "I don't know what you think you're doing, but you will leave." Detective Mara Alvarez stepped forward. "No one is leaving yet, Mr. Bennett." The room changed. Until that moment, guests had treated Claire's entrance as another family outburst, another scene in a scandal already too dramatic to understand. But the detective's voice carried the weight of something different. Not grief, not accusation, authority. Robert's eyes narrowed. "Who are you?" "Detective Alvarez, Financial Crimes Division." She held up her badge. "We need to pause this signing." A murmur moved through the ballroom. Board members leaned toward one another. The legal assistant near the signing table went rigid. The photographer lowered his camera, then thought better of it and lifted it again. At the back of the room, one of the local reporters whispered, "Financial crimes?" Madison pressed a hand to her stomach and took one step back. Ethan finally lowered the pen. "What is going on?" he asked. Claire looked at him. For once, she did not answer. This was not her grief speaking now. This was evidence. Olivia walked to the signing table and placed a slim folder beside the equity packet. "Mr. Bennett," she said, her voice clear and cold, "the signing cannot proceed. The proxy addendum in that packet appears to be connected to a fraudulent claim of pregnancy, forged medical documentation, suspicious vendor transfers, and an attempt to move company funds through entities associated with Lucas Vale." Madison let out a broken sob. "That's a lie." Of course she said it beautifully. She said it with one hand over her stomach and tears trembling on her lashes. She said it like a woman who had already survived too much. Then she turned toward the room. "She's doing this because Ethan chose me," Madison cried. "She can't stand it. She couldn't stand that he wanted to protect his child." Diane rushed to her. "Madison, don't upset yourself." Claire watched her mother put both arms around Madison. Again, even now, even here, even with police in the room, Diane still moved toward the daughter who knew how to collapse. Robert pointed toward Claire. "You have gone too far." Claire's expression did not change. Olivia opened the folder. "Actually," Olivia said, "we have only just begun." Detective Alvarez moved beside the signing table and looked at Ethan. "Mr. Whitmore, were you about to sign this proxy addendum?" Ethan swallowed. "I was reviewing it." That was not the question. His face tightened. "Yes. And your understanding was that this proxy was necessary to protect the financial interests of an unborn child?" Ethan looked toward Madison. Madison stared at him with wet, pleading eyes. He looked away. "Yes," he said quietly. Olivia removed the first page from her folder. "Then let's begin with the child." Madison made a sound like pain. Diane snapped, "How dare you!" Olivia did not even look at her. "The pregnancy confirmation Madison Bennett presented yesterday is not valid." A sharp silence fell. Madison's hand tightened around Diane's sleeve. Olivia continued. "The clinic address on the document is outdated. The clinic currently operating at that location has no record matching the file number Madison provided. The doctor named on the form is not employed there and has not been licensed to practice for 18 months. The record number does not match the clinic's formatting system. The ultrasound image attached to the form appears to have been taken from an unrelated archived image." Ethan stared at Madison. "No," Madison whispered. Olivia placed the copies on the signing table one by one. Invalid clinic record. Suspended doctor license. Outdated address. Image source match. Each page landed with a soft sound. Each sound seemed louder than the last. Robert stepped closer, face rigid. Medical information is private. Fraudulent medical documentation used to trigger a financial proxy is evidence, Olivia said. Diane looked from the papers to Madison. Sweetheart? Madison began crying harder. They're twisting everything, she sobbed. Claire paid people. She had to. She wants to humiliate me. Claire finally spoke. Madison. Her sister turned toward her. Claire's voice was calm enough to frighten the room. Are you pregnant? Madison's face crumpled. Why are you making me say this in front of everyone? Because yesterday, you had no problem saying it in front of everyone when it got you my wedding. A low murmur moved through the guests. Ethan stepped forward, his voice rough. Madison, answer her. Madison looked at him. For the first time, fear cut through the performance. Ethan, are you pregnant? She opened her mouth. No sound came out. The silence was the first confession. Diane's hand fell slowly from Madison's shoulder. Robert went still. Ethan's face changed in a way Claire almost did not want to see. It was not heartbreak, not yet. It was a man's mind, refusing to accept the door opening beneath his feet. Olivia looked toward the hotel technician standing near the side wall. Play the first video. Robert turned sharply. What video? The large screen behind the signing platform flickered to life. The image was grainy but clear enough. The hallway outside Claire's bridal suite. The timestamp showed the morning of the wedding. Madison stood alone outside the door, not crying, not shaking, not holding her stomach. She stood straight, phone pressed to her ear, one hand smoothing her hair. Audio crackled, then sharpened. Madison's voice filled the ballroom. After they believe the baby, Ethan will sign. Claire will have to step aside. She always does. A gasp rippled through the room. On screen, Madison laughed softly. No, she won't fight. Not at first. Mom will handle her. She'll tell Claire she's stronger. It always works. Diane covered her mouth. The video continued. Madison turned slightly, and the camera caught her smile. I want the dress. If I'm going to take her place, I might as well look the part. The screen went dark. No one spoke. Madison stared at the blank screen as if she could will it to disappear. Claire looked at Diane. Her mother's eyes were wide, wet, and destroyed. For a moment, Claire almost saw the exact instant Diane understood that the sentence she had used her whole life, "You're stronger than Madison," had become a tool in Madison's hand. Ethan turned to Madison. You planned it. Madison shook her head violently. No, that was taken out of context. Olivia's eyebrows lifted. Impressively specific context. Madison pointed at Claire. She edited it. Detective Alvarez spoke. The hotel provided the original security file. Chain of custody has been preserved. That made Madison stop. Robert's voice came out low. Madison. She turned toward him. For the first time in her life, Robert Bennett looked at his younger daughter not as something fragile to protect, but as something he did not understand. Madison's lips trembled. Daddy, I was scared. Claire felt something cold move through her. Even now, Madison reached for the same door. And even now, part of Robert wanted to open it. Olivia did not let him. Ryan, she said. Ryan Cole stepped forward with a folder clutched in both hands. He looked terrified, but he did not stop. He placed several financial summaries on the signing table. These are the event-related transfers flagged over the past 8 weeks, he said, voice unsteady at first. Then he swallowed, adjusted his glasses, and continued. Payments were coded as wedding expenses, floral deposits, media coordination, transportation, hotel surcharges, guest hospitality, and consulting. Several invoices were inflated. Several vendors were either non-existent or connected to shell entities. He turned one page toward Robert. This company, Vail Strategic Concepts, received multiple payments through Madison's temporary event authorization. Robert looked at the page. His face drained of color. Ryan continued, stronger now. The final pending transfer was scheduled to release after tonight's signing packet was completed. The proxy addendum would have allowed Madison to claim authority through Ethan's equity rights under the premise of protecting an unborn Bennett heir. Madison laughed suddenly. It was too sharp. Too ugly. Everyone turned toward her. So, now the accountant is Claire's hero, she said. Convenient. Ryan flinched, but Claire stepped beside him. Olivia placed another document down. Someone used Claire's secondary code and Ryan's electronic signature to create a blame trail, she said. But the timestamps contradict both of their locations. The access pattern also shows remote duplication consistent with credential misuse. Ryan looked at Robert. I didn't steal from you, he said quietly, and neither did Claire. Robert did not answer. For once, the man who always had an answer had none. Detective Alvarez looked toward one of her officers. Proceed with the transfer hold. The officer stepped aside, speaking into his phone. Madison's gaze darted toward the exits. Claire saw it. So did Alvarez. Ms. Bennett, the detective said. Stay where you are. Madison lifted her chin. Am I under arrest? Not yet. The words should have calmed her. They did not. Because everyone in the room understood the last part had not been spoken. Not yet. Olivia removed 2 airline reservations from her folder. Let's discuss travel. Madison's face went white. Ethan watched Olivia place the pages on the table. 1 ticket for Madison Bennett. 1 ticket for Lucas Vale. Same flight. Same departure time. Later that night. No Ethan Whitmore. Ethan picked up the page with Madison's name. His hand shook. No, he said under his breath. Madison reached for him. Ethan, listen to me. He pulled away. The movement was small, but it was the first time he had refused her touch. What is this? I was scared, she said quickly. Before yesterday, before I told you, I thought maybe I would have to leave. Olivia placed another page beside the tickets. Recovered message thread between Madison Bennett and Lucas Vale. Madison lunged forward. Detective Alvarez caught her wrist before she reached the table. The ballroom exploded in whispers. Madison jerked back. You can't use private messages. You'd be surprised, Olivia said. Claire did not smile. She watched Ethan read the first line. After he signs, I don't have to pretend anymore. He looked up, breathing hard. Olivia pointed to the next. Claire will be blamed. Her code is already in the logs. Then the next. Ryan, too, if needed. Accountants always look guilty when numbers go missing. Ethan's eyes stopped on Madison's final message. He won't hesitate. Men like Ethan would rather sign than admit they ruined their lives for nothing. Something inside Ethan collapsed. Claire saw it happen. His shoulders dropped. His mouth parted slightly. The ring on his hand flashed under the chandelier as he lowered the paper. For 2 days, Ethan had looked tortured, guilty, noble in his own imagination. A man trapped by duty. A man trying to do right in impossible circumstances. Now he simply looked used. Madison, he said. She looked at him, and for one moment, the mask was gone. Annoyance flashed across her face. Not sorrow, not love. Annoyance that the tool had realized it was a tool before she was done using it. You were going to leave with him, Ethan said. Madison's eyes hardened. Don't act like you're the victim. The sentence stunned him. She seemed to realize too late that she had said it in her real voice. But by then, everyone had heard. Ethan stared at her. Was any of it real? Madison's laugh came out broken and bitter. What did you want to be real, Ethan? The baby, the marriage, me looking at you like you were some brave man saving me? His face twisted. Stop, Diane whispered. But Madison was done stopping. The room had turned against her. So she turned against the room. You really thought I wanted to be your wife? Madison asked Ethan. You were never the prize. You were the pen. Ethan looked as if she had struck him. Claire remembered saying almost the same thing to him. Madison had made it crueler because Madison had never loved him enough to soften anything. I was useful, Ethan said, voice hollow. Madison tilted her head. Finally, a correct answer, Diane sobbed. Robert took 1 step back, as if the daughter in front of him had become contagious. Madison turned on them both. Oh, don't look at me like that. Diane shook her head. Madison, how could you? How could I? Madison repeated, voice rising. You taught me how. Diane froze. Robert's face hardened. That is enough. No, Daddy, it isn't. Madison's eyes burned now. The tears were gone. In their place was 26 years of spoiled hunger, resentment, and entitlement stripped bare. You taught me that Bennett women survive by being useful or being fragile. Claire chose useful. I chose fragile. Guess which one got loved? Claire stood very still. Madison pointed at Diane. You taught me that if I cried, Claire would move. If I broke something, Claire would fix it. If I wanted something, Claire would be told she was older, stronger, colder, less in need. You made her my shield and then acted shocked when I learned where to aim. Diane covered her mouth, crying too hard to speak. Madison turned to Robert. And you? You never trusted me with the company. You gave Claire the numbers, the meetings, the respect. You gave me dresses, cards, charity lunches, and a smile for photographs. You wanted me pretty and harmless. Robert's jaw clenched. So you stole from me? Madison laughed. I took what I could reach. Claire finally spoke. No, Madison, you took what everyone let you reach. Madison swung toward her. Claire held her gaze. You were not unloved, Claire said. You were unchecked. Madison's face twisted. That landed deeper than an insult, because it was true. Detective Alvarez stepped forward. Madison Bennett, you are under arrest on suspicion of fraud, attempted financial theft, falsifying documents, identity misuse, and conspiracy related to the movement of Bennett Group funds through shell entities. The words landed like stones. Diane screamed softly, No! Robert said nothing. Ethan stood motionless. Madison backed away. No, you don't get to do this. Alvarez nodded to the officers. They moved toward her. Madison tried to turn. The dress stopped her. The skirt was too heavy, too long, too full of borrowed grandeur. The lace caught under her heel. She stumbled, grabbing at the air, and for one humiliating second, she fought the very gown she had stolen. A sharp, hysterical laugh broke from somewhere in the room, quickly smothered. Madison looked down at the fabric with hatred. Claire watched without moving. The image burned itself into her memory. Madison in the stolen dress, trying to run from the truth and tripping over the symbol of what she had taken. One officer caught Madison's arm. She struggled. Don't touch me. Alvarez's voice stayed calm. Turn around. Diane stepped forward instinctively. Claire spoke before she could think better of it. Mom. Diane stopped. Slowly, painfully, she looked at Claire. For once, Claire did not ask. She did not plead. She simply held her mother's eyes. Diane did not move again. The officer cuffed Madison's wrists behind her back. The metal looked obscene against the lace. Madison turned her head toward Diane. Mom, please. Diane sobbed, but her feet stayed planted. Madison turned to Robert. Daddy? Robert closed his eyes. That was his answer. The officers led Madison down the aisle. Yesterday, guests had stood to watch her walk in Claire's dress as a bride. Tonight, they stood frozen as she was taken out in the same dress as a suspect. Phones were raised, cameras flashed. Whispers broke into open shock. Madison kept her chin high for the first few steps. Then the skirt caught again, jerking her backward. This time, no one helped immediately. An officer freed the fabric with professional indifference. Madison's face crumpled, not from guilt, but from the humiliation of needing assistance in the costume of her victory. As she passed Claire, she stopped. The officer tightened his grip, but Claire lifted one hand. Alvarez allowed the pause. Madison looked at her sister with hatred so pure it almost glowed. You think you won? Claire looked at the dress, then at Madison. No, she said quietly. I think I stopped losing. Madison's mouth twisted. Then the officers led her out. The ballroom doors closed behind them. For several seconds, the room did not breathe. Then sound returned all at once. Whispers. Chairs. Diane crying. Robert ordering someone to stop the reporters. Board members speaking urgently to legal counsel. The detective's officer on the phone confirming the hold on transfers. Olivia collecting documents from the table with clinical precision. Ethan still stood beside the signing table, holding the message printout. Claire saw him look at the fountain pen, then at the unsigned packet, then at his wedding ring. His face broke, not dramatically. Ethan had always been too vain for dramatic collapse, but the structure of him gave way. He sat down heavily in one of the front chairs and covered his face with both hands. Diane approached Claire first. She looked older than she had an hour before. No, Claire realized. Not older, unprotected by denial. Claire, Diane whispered. Claire did not answer. Diane reached toward her, then stopped before touching her. Good. At least she had learned that much tonight. I thought I was protecting her, Diane said. Claire looked at her mother. You protected Madison by sacrificing me. Diane flinched. And you did it so often, Claire continued, that she learned to bring the knife to you first. Diane began crying again. I didn't know. You didn't want to know. That was cruel. It was also true. Diane bowed her head. Robert came next. For the first time Claire could remember, her father looked uncertain in a room full of his own people. He stopped in front of her, but the distance between them felt wider than the ballroom. I failed you, he said. Claire almost laughed. The sentence was too small for what he had done. Yes, she said. Robert accepted it. That surprised her. I should have listened when you said the documents needed verification, he said. I should have stopped the ceremony. I should never have allowed them to take your dress. Claire's throat tightened unexpectedly. Not because the apology fixed anything, because some buried part of her had waited her whole life to hear Robert Bennett admit he should have protected her. But the waiting part of her was not in charge anymore. You suspended me, she said. You let the board think I might have stolen from the company. Robert closed his eyes briefly. I will correct that immediately. No, Claire said. You will not correct it quietly. He looked at her. You will issue a full statement to the board that my access was misused, that I reported the irregularities, and that Ryan Cole assisted the investigation. You will authorize an independent audit. You will remove family discretion from financial access approvals. And if I return to Bennett Group, it will not be as the daughter you call when things are broken. It will be under a formal governance structure with authority that cannot be taken because Madison cries or you panic. Robert stared at her. Then he nodded. No argument, no command, no lecture about family, just a nod. Done, he said. Claire believed he meant it. She did not yet know if that mattered. Ethan stood. He came toward her slowly, as if approaching a person who might vanish. Claire? She turned. There was a time when hearing her name and his voice would have softened everything in her. That time felt distant now, almost belonging to another woman. I didn't know, he said. Claire looked at him. No, you didn't check. He swallowed. I was scared. So was I. I thought I was doing the right thing. You thought doing the right thing meant everyone else should pay before you asked whether the story was true. His eyes reddened. I loved you. Claire studied him for a long moment. Maybe he had. In the limited way, Ethan loved anything, as long as it supported the version of himself he wanted to see. She reached into her purse and took out the engagement ring. His breath caught. Claire held it out. He stared at it, as if it were more painful than the handcuffs had been. Claire, please. No. He looked up. She placed the ring in his palm and closed his fingers around it. Our relationship ended yesterday, she said. Not when Madison lied, when you chose not to ask for the truth, because the lie still gave you a place in this family. Ethan shook his head. That's not fair. A faint, tired smile touched her mouth. There it is again. He looked down. I was deceived, he whispered. Yes, Claire said, but not when you abandoned me. You were deceived about the reward you thought you would receive. The words struck him silently. He did not follow her when she walked away. 6 months later, the Grand Ashford called about the dress. Claire almost told them to burn it. Instead, she went. Not because she wanted the dress, because some endings had to be looked at directly. The hotel manager met her in a private room with a garment bag laid across a table. We had it cleaned as best we could at Gascon, he said carefully. There was some damage along the hem. Claire unzipped the bag. The dress lay inside, pale and still. The lace was intact. The bodice remained beautiful. But the hem was torn where Madison had tripped. There was a faint gray stain along the train, impossible to remove completely. Claire touched the fabric. Once, she had thought this dress would carry her into a future. Then it had become the thing used to erase her. Then it had become the thing that stopped Madison from running. Strange how symbols changed depending on who survived them. The manager cleared his throat. If you'd like, we can send it to a specialist. They may be able to restore it further. Claire looked at the torn hem. Then she zipped the bag closed. No, she said. It doesn't need to be restored. He hesitated. Would you like to take it with you? Claire thought of Diane crying in the ballroom, Robert signing the audit authorization, Ryan testifying safely, Olivia standing beside her like a blade, Ethan's face when he realized he had been nothing but a pen, Madison being led down the aisle in handcuffs, still wearing victory like a costume she could no longer remove. And she thought of herself in the bridal suite that morning, believing the day belonged to her because a dress waited by the window. No, Claire said. Donate the fabric if it can be used. Destroy it if it can't. The manager nodded. Claire left the Grand Ashford through the front doors. Not the service exit. Not the back corridor. Not hidden from guests, reporters, or family shame. She walked out beneath clear afternoon light, wearing a navy coat, carrying nothing Madison had touched and nothing Ethan had given her. Outside, the city moved on. So did she. Madison had walked into the aisle in Claire's dress, believing she had stolen Claire's life. But there were things a person could put on without ever possessing. A dress, a name, a role, a future. The truth was not one of them. And the day Claire Bennett lost her wedding dress was the day she finally stopped asking anyone else for permission to own herself.